283-6160. Here in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
And Matt.
And Bonnie.
Of course, you can bring up anything. That is the point of the show here. That's why we call it Free Talk Live. We always bring things in that you might find interesting to discuss. Coming up, Matt, you're going to give us the rundown of some of the gun-related news, because that's one of your favorite topics.
It's been a busy week.
And you're kind of our resident expert.
I am the gun nut.
In that area. So we can talk about that. Plus, last night we did get into the inflation story, which was still over 8%. It was 8.3% according to the government's highly manipulated numbers, the CPI. They had predicted that it was going to be lower than that, but it is like a fraction of two tenths of a percent lower than it was last month. But according to Fox Business,
you should explain to the listener. Does that mean that inflation stopped going up because it's different from last month?
No, inflation is continuing to go up. That's a good point, Bonnie.
Yep.
Yeah,
because it's just comparing the rate of inflation from April 2021 to the rate of inflation in April 2022.
Correct. I mean, it is not up as much, but just barely. I mean, we're talking about a very small statistical number here. It has not gone into the double digits like the producer price index has done. And according to the Fox Business report here, that number, I guess, came out today looking at the month of April. Producer price index is not just in the double digits, it's at 11% for April. Now, again, that's quote-unquote down if you compare it to March's 11.2%, but a very, very small difference there, and still that is not going to make anyone feel good when they go and pay prices at the store, because if the producers are paying more, that means the customers are going to pay more, because the businesses can only absorb loss for so long. They will try, some of them. They will, and some of them do it better than others. Actually, I've been sitting on a show prep for a couple weeks now about the Amazon tea. Or Arizona tea. Sorry, I started with an A.
Oh, yeah, Arizona iced tea. 99 cents.
Yeah, still 99 cents.
Still 99 cents?
Yeah, and it's an interesting story. It's one of those pieces about...
I don't see that as a viable business decision.
Yeah, do they sell anything else?
They do. They have some other brands that make them a little bit more money, I guess, that they sell. But that's something that we could talk about coming up here in a moment. But that's one example of a business that is just basically eating away at their profits in
100%.
order to keep their product the way it's always been. But that can only go for so long in an environment where you have 11% month after month wholesale inflation rate, where you've got crazy money printing that just keeps on going.
Hostile central bank, hostile politicians.
Yeah, I mean, so kudos to them for holding it down as long as they have, but you have to wonder when that's going to break. If you want to join the show, the number is 603-283-6160. I didn't want to say much more about this. The number go up and number go down slightly, but still up in the double digits as far as wholesale price inflation.
A big problem with, people love everything to be free range and organic except their economy.
Ooh, yeah.
And I never understood that failure of thought on the part of most people.
Yeah, I don't think they think very much about it at all.
No, they think that somebody's going to push some buttons and pull some levers and it'll all be fixed. Well, pushing buttons and pulling levers is what ruined it all in the first place.
Absolutely.
Economies are things that need to grow. They need to you plant the seed and you walk away. And the way the seed is planted in the economy is by people meeting with other people and ironing out a deal for anything, a stick of bubble gum. That's where it all starts.
Yeah, and the government, of course, staying out of the way. It'd be nice if they didn't exist at all, but if they're going to be there, then they should leave people the hell alone and let them run their business the way they want, and let the marketplace decide.
And this civilization, this culture that we're living in, Western, the United States in particular, it was a country that built itself from absolutely nothing, just a farmer economy into the most powerful country in the world, the most powerful economy in the world in a matter of 50 or 60 years. And then the Industrial Revolution happened and it made it even stronger. So, I mean, why did we when they started regulating everything in sight and licensing everything and requiring permission slips for everything in sight, at what point did that make anything better for anybody? People have been taking that lying down. That's probably one of the most, if you want to strike at the root of tyranny, that is probably one place you should start, and it's regulatory capture and licensing. I don't think people realize how important it is to defy that and throw that on the coals and let it burn a little bit.
It's just like boring legalese documents to them instead of like, oh, we oppose abortion being illegal. That's something
it
exciting
doesn't have the
for people.
sizzle, is what you're saying.
But I completely agree that it's one of the most important things.
Yeah, well, and this comes to something I did this afternoon. I was on a panel discussion about CBDCs, aka the central bank digital currency. And that's an idea that they've been tossing around for the last couple of years, and it seems to be getting more serious. They're issuing more reports, more boring paperwork about this stuff. And it's just so many people in this sector take regulation for granted as though, well, that's just the way it's got to be. We got to do our know your customer. We got to jump through all these hoops. And it doesn't help. All it does is it helps the established business owners protect them from competition.
Yeah.
That's what it does every time, whether we're talking about the SEC regulating quote-unquote securities, this high level where they're attacking crypto companies left and right now, or we're talking about the lowest level local government regulator, the health board supervisor in downtown fill-in-the-blank city, or the state of New Hampshire regulating hair braiding or whatever. Whatever it is we're talking about, it's always the same story. The regulators claim they're on the side of the consumer, but the reality is the consumer is not actually protected. It is the established businesses, whether we're talking about Uber coming in and challenging the existing taxi cab companies, which they were able to do successfully because they never went and asked permission.
They just did it.
They just came out with a product into the marketplace. Boom. They did their research first, but they didn't tell anybody. They didn't ask anybody to say, hey, can we do this? We'd really like to do this. Because, of course, if you do that to the government, they're going to say, well, whoa there, partner. You just can't start a new business, especially a business we don't understand and we've never seen before.
Yeah, and something that worries me about crypto, not crypto at all, but people, the unknowing average person about cryptocurrency, I heard crypto was getting banned. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I got bad news for the people who are going to ban it, because crypto doesn't care if it's banned or not. Crypto is going to transact. Crypto, the genie is out of the bottle, and it's not going away no matter what anybody says. And the central bank digital currency people, I think that's the only reaction I think that's the only play they have in their book at all.
Is ban it.
Is to create a digital currency that's not encrypted and declares something else banned, which is man, they got a steep hill to climb on that one.
I noticed Monero went up a lot as all the other S coins went down.
Really? Recently?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good to know.
Heard about.
Yeah, that makes me happy because I love Monero. Monero was just down this week. So,
well, everything's been down this week.
Yeah.
But
it's been brutal.
In the ranking of top cryptos, it went up.
Good deal.
Nice. Glad to hear that. If you want to weigh in here, the number is 603-283-6160. Phones are, of course, open. On the way, Matt, we're going to get into your update. You want to talk about the latest from the gun freedom scene. Will we be seeing some changes? Are there some chess pieces in motion? And you've got a story about that. Your thoughts? The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can join us. You can bring up whatever's on your mind. Take control of the airwaves here on Free Talk Live. Don't forget, you can join our social media platform over at social.freetalklive.com and interact with other Free Talk Live listeners and some of the hosts there. That's social.freetalklive.com. Phones are open. You can join us on Free Talk Live.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio is great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Negotiation isn't just something union leaders and sports agents do. Your entire day is a series of negotiations. If you have young children, you know that. In fact, your kids can teach you a lot about negotiating with grown-ups. According to the world's greatest negotiator, Herb Cohen, author of You Can Negotiate Anything. Herb says that kids understand the process of decision-making within an organization. When one parent says no, they'll ask the other. And Cohen says children persist and persevere. And like smart negotiators of all ages, kids know that no is an opening bargaining position. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important, especially if you're a job seeker. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open. You can join us here at 603-283-6160 and bring up whatever is on your mind at 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's Ian,
Matt,
and Bonnie.
Join us online anytime you want over at freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Bitcoin.com. If you're ready to get into the world of cryptocurrency, might be a good time, considering it looks like just about everything is on sale. With Bitcoin below $30,000 for the last couple of days. I think it's been floating at around $28,000 today, if I recall correctly. So
it's a bloodbath.
It's pretty brutal out there. But, of course, it's still higher than it was 2 years ago.
Bitcoin's dead.
I beg to differ, although it looks like it's up to about 29,000 right now. So you want to learn the basics about cryptocurrency, get on over to bitcoin.com, click Get Started at the top of the page there, and you can find some introductory videos that will help you understand some of the basic concepts. And there are some new ideas that are in play here, so you really ought to get them down. And you can start that process over at Bitcoin.com. Again, click Get Started at the top of the page. We're going to get to Matt's story about some of the gun news out there in the United States. But first, let's go to the phones here and talk to Mark in Connecticut. You're on Free Talk Live. Hello, Mark.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, guys.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
What's on your mind?
Well, yeah, I've listened to you guys for a while. Now, I'm not a libertarian, but I do appreciate, especially, your attitude towards authority, to the police, and just being skeptical of authority. I think that's healthy. I think a little too much skepticism, though, leads to kind of like chasing your tail and never really knowing what the truth is, which I'm not going to get into now. But you were mentioning, just the problem with inflation and of course, just free markets and competition. And I was curious, are you guys a pro antitrust? Because if you recall in history, the turn of the century, and I think that, Theodore Roosevelt was famous for this, but, there were a lot of very destructive monopolies that were broken up by Congress, which led to a lot of healthy competition. Of course, you have Bell Telephone. That's a more recent example, which in my lifetime, I noticed a big change for the better. Do you guys support any kind of congressional action on, say, breaking up? I know big tech is one of those things that's been discussed, but I never heard Republicans really go all the way with trying to break them up, especially when Trump was in power and they had a little more clout in Congress.
We've talked about this on the air before, at least me and Ian. I don't know if Matt was on this show, but we've talked about how Apple shouldn't have been forced to be broken up. I don't think that any company
Apple was broken up?
Wasn't it Apple or another iPhone, Mac? Or I don't know how they...
I don't recall that.
We talked about that before with, I think, Chris Wade.
I can give you my 2 cents.
Yeah,
on
please.
No, I don't think I think the Sherman Antitrust Act was a horrible thing. And here's why. All it did was break up a gigantic monopoly into tiny little segments of itself, all still owned by the same people. So it didn't scatter anything to the winds. It didn't delete any power. In fact, it's like they went in and split up a cancer cell, and instead of having one big cancer cell that was by its very nature essentially suicidal, and I'll explain that in a sec. And they ended up with dozen little cancer cells, which then reproduce their own little problems. So the reason I say that a monopoly is suicidal is because they get so big and their product starts to suck. And what it starts to look like is the same product that you would find under communism, like where you have a centralized control that's making the same thing for everybody, and everybody dresses in gray. And all the cars are gray, and none of them run on the showroom floor. It's just garbage. When you have competition, things are better, obviously. But when stuff starts to fall apart so bad that new technologies have to come around. Also, by the way, a lot of our modern monopolies come from intellectual property laws that protecting an idea. Nobody else is allowed to come to market with a similar or equal thing because they'll be sued for it. So that said, I think allowing a monopoly to run its course and don't mess with it, let people get real angry with the product and service they're getting. Somebody else is going to come along with another idea that's going to be better and more viable and more friendly and not gray and boring. So no, I don't think I think the Sherman Antitrust Act was. Last I knew, the Sherman Antitrust Act was actually written by Standard Oil lawyers.
Of course.
So if that should be a dead giveaway. Politicians didn't write that bill. Lawyers wrote that bill. And you just find out who the lawyers worked for. They worked for Standard Oil. They were Rockefeller lawyers.
So basically what you're saying is there really needs to be kind of an overhaul and another look at the mechanisms to prevent that sort of, not just breaking up. Yeah, so it's like price fixing. So you might break up an industry, but they are all in collusion again to keep prices at a certain level.
Yeah.
I'm finding that with big oil, and of course with chicken processing plants. You've got a few players in the game, and you really
heavily regulated.
So I think that,
while we're heavily regulated, that's what seems silly to me. It's like there are still things that people consider monopolies, and there's extreme amounts of regulation now. Why not just not feel like you have to meddle with everything? And, why do you think one person or one group of people can just figure out exactly how it needs to work better than the people who are doing business with these companies?
Right. And if you want to look at in a modern day real world setting, more and more popular now, people want to get food that they know where it came from. They don't want to get chicken from Tyson. They want to get it from the farm down the road. But the chicken from Tyson is $1.99 a pound. But the chicken from down the road, it's free range organic. I know where it comes from. He's charging $8.99 a pound.
Yeah, and it's
but he's required by law, his little tiny operation, to move all of his chicken through a state inspector processing plant that's, prohibitively expensive for him to do, and all the licensing and the nutrition facts, and now all this stuff is stuff that the Tyson, they've got a $1 trillion payroll they can get people
with
to
tons
handle.
of attorneys.
They literally have USDA people, FDA people who live at the plant. The little guy down the road can't afford to do that. So again, we're just running into more government regulation, making it harder and harder for us as consumers to get what we really want in the name of somehow protecting us.
Well, I think you guys touched on it, but it deserves reiteration. That is that the regulations are written by the existing players every time. Even Uber has gotten into writing regulations so they can keep other people out of now their marketplace. And so every time the regulations are written by the existing players, you also get what's called regulatory capture, where the regulatory agencies themselves are in many cases staffed, board members and such are made up of the people that run the businesses. So they get their people on the inside of the state, and they totally control the apparatus of regulation from top to bottom.
The Department of Agriculture has always been run by a Monsanto person.
Yeah. So, and then, of course,
it was Microsoft.
Microsoft was broken up?
Yep.
Well, yeah, they went through all the antitrust stuff.
And we talked about it on the show.
They've been walking the line with that since they were started.
Mark, if you can hang on, want to continue the discussion, stand by if you can. The number 603-283-6160, because I think it's important to focus a little bit more on the concept of a monopoly and what it is, because you really can't have a monopoly, a true one, without government force backing it up. There's more coming up. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odyssey, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey. You can watch live or anytime on our Odyssey channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odyssey today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Flags have been lowered at the White House after the U.S. recorded its 1 millionth COVID-19 death. That number once unthinkable. 2 years ago, the U.S. government thought the death toll might reach around 120,000. But then came pushback by Americans over vaccines, lockdowns, and public health restrictions. President Biden marked the moment during a speech to a global COVID summit.
Today, we mark a tragic milestone here in the United States. 1 million COVID deaths. 1 million empty chairs around the family dinner table. Each irreplaceable. We all must do more. We must honor those we have lost by doing everything we can to prevent as many deaths as possible.
And he repeated his call on Congress to provide him with another $22.5 billion to battle the pandemic. 2 top Twitter executives are leaving the company, and it wasn't their idea. The shake-up comes ahead of the expected takeover of the platform by billionaire Elon Musk later this year. From FSN's bureau in Silicon Valley, Ira Spitzer reports.
Twitter's CEO Parag Agarwal announced the departures of the company's head of consumer and its revenue product lead in an internal memo, noting that Twitter hadn't hit certain milestones in revenue and user growth. The changes come with Tesla CEO Elon Musk looking to complete his $44 billion buyout of Twitter, which he intends to take private. Musk reportedly has told the banks who helped fund the purchase that he planned to cut Twitter's executive pay in a bid to limit costs across the board.
NATO's Secretary General says Finland's application to join the military alliance will be smooth and swift once it's formalised. Finland and Sweden are expected to announce they're applying to join NATO as early as this Sunday. But the move has angered Russia, as FSN's Moscow correspondent Stuart Smith reports from our bureau in the Russian capital, where he is subject to the Kremlin's reporting restrictions.
It was clear that Russia wouldn't be happy, and indeed the Kremlin has come out and said that Finland's accession to NATO will be a threat to Russia. Russia considers NATO a military alliance that is not just defensive and doesn't just defend itself, but also is aggressive, and therefore interprets any NATO action as one which will potentially be damaging to Russia's territorial integrity.
Big news today in the world of space exploration.
The Event Horizon Telescope is delighted to share with you the first direct image of the gentle giant in the center of our galaxy.
Scientists say that black hole is 26,000 light years away from Earth. The images were captured by 8 separate telescopes, and it does indeed look like a black hole surrounded by superheated golden gases. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open here, and you can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're talking about monopolies, and that's thanks to a phone call that Mark is still on the line, so we're going to get back into that discussion here. But with you tonight, it's Ian,
Matt,
And Bonnie.
and I do want to say thanks to Gavin68, who is a Free Talk Live supporter of our AMPS Patreon, which you can join over at amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. You can get signed up there with your PayPal or your debit card or your credit card over at amps.freetalklive.com. It helps us advertise, market, promote, and support what we do here, spreading the ideas of liberty and peace around the United States and beyond. You get some cool benefits by joining over at amps.freetalklive.com. Bonnie, I had to look it up just because it just didn't ring a bell with me, and there apparently was a court decision at the federal district court level ordering Microsoft to be broken into 2 separate units, one to produce the operating system and one to produce other software components. However, on appeal, the appeals court reversed that ruling and said, nope, you don't have to break up Microsoft, but you can come at them again with something else. And so the Department of Justice announced in 2001, just before September 11th, actually, that it was no longer seeking to break up Microsoft and would instead seek a lesser antitrust penalty. And then, according to this story here, in the next month or 2 months later, they reached an agreement to settle the case. And that proposed settlement required Microsoft to share its application programming interfaces with third-party companies and appoint a panel of 3 people who would have full access to their systems records and code for 5 years in order to ensure compliance. So that was it. That was the end of that story. They didn't actually get broken up. But let's get back into the discussion here with Mark in Connecticut. There was a point I wanted to focus on a little bit here because, Mark, you brought up a couple of examples. You said, you were asking us, you said, well, do you guys support antitrust actions? Do you support, the government coming in and breaking up a so-called monopoly? And you gave an example of, you didn't specify, but the 1800s. I suspect you were getting at Rockefeller's oil company. Was that one of them?
Yeah, there's Standard Oil, but and I agree that did break up companies to form smaller companies owned by the same people, and of course, price fixing was part of that. But I wanted to mention before I go that, and AT&T I think is the most recent example, and that's not.
Well, yeah, you also mentioned Bell, and that, as I understand it, was a government-enforced monopoly from top to bottom.
Yes, well, it made sense in the beginning.
No, it doesn't make sense.
A lot of monopolies too.
Yeah, it never makes sense. It only makes sense for the monopoly because they get to exclude other competitors from the marketplace. And this is what I wanted to come back to before you make whatever your next point was going to be. When you go back and you look at the oil Standard Oil, from my understanding, and I've not deeply studied this particular issue, but from my understanding of that time, this was as close as someone could come to a non-government enforced monopoly.
Natural monopoly.
Yeah, and it was done through, and this is very unusual because usually when you get a monopoly, it's because they're being enforced by the state.
I know of one instance of successful socialism in the world ever, and I know of one instance of a monopoly that didn't commit suicide in the world. Socialism, the success story was Libya, but that guy was a nutcase, 100%, and was on borrowed time as it was. And the successful story of monopoly, which still exists as far as I know, is a company that makes glasses frames in Italy. And if you see glasses frames, there's a good chance that they were made at that factory in Italy. The fact is, they just turn out a great product, always have. They keep their prices where people can afford them. They don't mess around with any exorbitant pricing or anything like that, so people can actually get them. They're just an extremely popular company that naturally edges out all competition.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong about this, Matt, on regards to Standard Oil or anybody that knows. I had heard that at their peak, they were only at 90% of the market. They were still competitors to Standard Oil. Yeah. So, therefore, they were not a monopoly. They were just really good at what they did, and that was offering an affordable product to people to where it was hard for anybody else to get in and take away some of their market share by competition. But generally, if you are that good and you can just keep people out of competing with you by offering that good of a product, that good of a price, or whatever it was that made people go with them, then good for you.
Yeah,
the market should reward you.
I don't understand why anybody thinks that the government should stop that from happening so that other people can get in on the same business. They can start a different business. Other people can start businesses that are just like not even in that sector. If there's no good in the market for oil, do something else.
Well, and that's the thing. Once a company starts getting greedy and they start charging too much, then that's a market signal to somebody else to say, okay, you can enter this marketplace. You can make some money here. You can be the better service provider, and you can crib those customers away from.
Except when it's a government-enforced monopoly.
Right.
Like my mom right now. My mom called me again, second time this month. This woman's recovering from a cancer operation. She needs to be able to have electricity in her house. But NYSEG, New York State Electric and Gas, everybody who lives in New York listening to this show right now just gasped with like a pukey taste in their back of their mouth. We have them in this state too, but I should say. But apparently New York State Electric and Gas is now owned by Spain, some Spaniards. And I guess that's the truth with a few of these state monopoly electrical, service providers. And for the second time this month, her power has gone down. This time it was 500 people. Last time it was 60,000 people. And it's like the infrastructure is so bad. They've just sat around collecting profits for as long as they've been a monopoly. The government said, okay, you're the only company allowed to sell electric and natural gas in New York State. So
have at it.
Have at it. Have fun.
Texas also has a monopoly on their energy things or businesses, and it is also highly regulated. And remember when it snowed down there and everybody's
that's right.
It froze to death.
That was really bad.
It was really, really bad. Before Mark goes, because he said he has to go, I would like to recommend...
He had one more point he wanted to make, I think. But go ahead, Bonnie.
Oh, I was going to say...
go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're really interested in this and not just our three, just opinions, I would look up the video on YouTube called Tom Woods on big business, monopolies, and price gouging, I think it is. That's what taught me all about that monopolies really aren't that bad. And oh my God, such a good video. It's only less than 15 minutes.
Well, monopolies are bad when they're enforced by the state.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess I want to make two quick points. One is that sometimes monopolies make sense if you don't have an existing infrastructure that actually makes sense. So early on with trains and, of course, with oil and the communications, having a lot of different companies competing, buying land, laying down track, laying down infrastructure is chaotic. And it's just not tenable. In the beginning...
If it's not tenable, they won't do it.
No, but they will. I mean, you're talking about, competition for, profits, but they're not considering the, how it's actually going to work in the long run for the betterment of the country. In other words, infrastructure that's all broken apart where train lines don't.
Yeah, there's no such thing as the betterment of the country. Something is better for some people, some things worse for others. It's impossible for anything to be better for anyone else other than like air existing, and nobody's going to be able to control that.
Look, there's something called city planning for a reason. Like there are reasons
and it's dumb
why.
and it ruins people's lives.
City planning exists just to give bureaucrats a job, dude.
Look, you're talking about, like I said, if you're talking about trains that have, tracks that have never been laid down, you're talking about infrastructure.
The train tracks in New York City were private originally, right?
That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that was not a good thing because you literally had tracks ending. No, because they didn't want people transferring to their competitors' train line, so they would deliberately make the trains inaccessible to each other.
So whoever made the trains the crappiest and like not connected to their other competitors would eventually die in the marketplace because people wouldn't want to use those trains.
And then their assets would be sold to the highest bidder. So your solution is to go in, because you didn't like the way the trains were set up, your solution is to get the government gang to go in and put a gun to somebody's head and make it work the way you think it should, right?
That's the result.
No, I'm just saying that there are some benefits.
No, that is what you're saying. That's exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
Thank you for the call tonight, Mark, because that's what backs every government program. That's what backs every government regulation.
A gun and a threat.
There's some goon squad that's willing to come in and throw you in a cage, and if you don't want to go with them to the cage, then they're going to get really violent. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
When a deer approaches a marijuana plant in the woods and nibbles off one of the buds, is that sad? Is that deer living a sad state of existence?
I have no idea. I've never heard of an animal eating something that would
Christy,
make them,
that's because you have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know one thing about cannabis. You don't know anything about it.
I understand that you want to partake of that drug.
Oh,
and
I do. Trust me.
Listen, I understand that you should have the right to do that.
Oh, thank you.
Where it's legal. Where it's legal.
Since the beginning of time, human beings and other animals have been altering their state of consciousness. Believe it or not, it's not just a human being thing.
Robins eat elderberries in the fall and get drunk on them.
Yes, so this is a common thing amongst the various different creatures of this earth.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern. Live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring Simon to their rally.
Walk with me. Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa, hey, who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today. This is...
You ain't going to make it.
Wait a minute.
Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Why are you running from me? Because you're scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? you can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, it's Ian,
Matt,
and Bonnie.
The phones are open as always. You can also join us online anytime you want over at freetalklive.com. You can download episodes of the show, and they are there at your leisure, freetalklive.com, going back for many years, and totally free. So we're going to go back to the phones here, and then coming up we'll get into the ATF, gun regulations, whatever the latest is. Matt's been chomping at the bit to tell us about it, so we'll get into that. But first, we got Chris on the line here, calling from Newport Beach. Chris, you're on Free Talk Live. On our
Hey, Ian. How are you?
Hey, good. Just for listeners that don't know, this is Chris from is it pronounced Sistani Capital or Sistani Capital?
Trust me, it's a play on sustainability.
Yeah. So he's a gentleman who invited me to the CBDC panel that I mentioned this afternoon, and so thank you again for having me out there. And once the video is available, I will certainly share that out so you guys who didn't get to watch it live will be able to see it. So Chris, what were you calling about?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that other people too get the benefit of what we talked about this morning, because from where we are standing as technology investors, the problem that is government-issued currency is kind of solved on a technical level, because the default medium of exchange has been bytes for a number of decades, and the unit of account, at least from a technology perspective, is simply an interface function. And so what you store your value in is typically a basket of things, right? So I wouldn't recommend that anybody keeps all their value in Bitcoin or all their value in real estate, and obviously not all your value in a fiat currency. So point being is, this is one of those technical realities that's not evenly distributed yet, and Roger Ver, that we talked about this morning, coined this term money over IP, I think very early on, and I've been in voice over IP for a very long time. And so the point there being is, we don't put stamps on emails, and neither do I pay for this phone call right now that I'm using Linphone for, right? So we did away with like the national telecom that got to meter you by the minute using the old phone system. But in a way, we are still maintaining this situation when it comes to money. So money, for the most part, is just bytes, and moving bytes around should be free, right? You don't put stamps on your email either.
I tend to agree. Although we've seen in the world of cryptocurrency, there is a small fee involved in sending those bytes from one point to another, and that's because of the miners usually that are involved in making sure that that process is secure and quick and reliable, and I think most people are willing to pay a small fee in order to do that. Of course, we've seen the real problem in cryptocurrency, at least thus far, is once crypto becomes too popular, it has scaling issues, and we've seen that with Bitcoin, BTC, and we see it right now with Ethereum as well, where no one in their right mind would use Ethereum for transferring value for a cup of coffee, and to a lesser extent, Bitcoin BTC is pretty much out for that too.
Yeah. So that's largely actually a state of the technology just being very early, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the early days of the internet, we had something called dial-up services.
Oh, yeah.
So my first bill for my dial-up service was something like $500.
Oh, God, yeah, I remember that, where you got billed by the minute when you connected to AOL and Prodigy and CompuServe back in the early
Forgot about Prodigy
90s.
and CompuServe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's still true for a few people around the world, actually, unfortunately. But yeah, it's kind of the same thing, to where eventually my expectation would be that we subsidize these costs for securing the network, and that you can move bytes around for free, right? So that we actually have programmable money at that point in time. Right?
I think that there's some blockchains that have been working on that. I know with the Stellar blockchain, their fees are so low that the Stellar Foundation just subsidizes them, so effectively there are no fees for the end user when they're using the Stellar
Well, how long
exchange.
can they do that? Forever?
I presume so. I'm not sure. It's a good question, Bonnie. I don't have an answer.
Honestly, the cost involved with that is pretty negligible at the end of the day. It's more about the decentralization and making it censorship resistant. And there, the typical confusion is that people confuse distribution and decentralization. Decentralization has more to do with the incentives, right? So if you were the only one that were running a network, it would be not at all in your interest, obviously, to base the mining reward on that network, because no one would trust it anymore, and people would move on if you ever manipulated it. Right?
Where what's a good website for people to visit? Is there an easy one to go to find the CBDC forums that you've been doing? I know they are online. You gave me a link before, but it didn't.
Yeah, I emailed you the link to the one that we did this morning.
Right.
We also do a lot of education, because basically 100% of what you kind of hear and learn about the space is some form of motivated reasoning, unfortunately. It's very, very sad. So you can share the link that I sent you, or I'll send you a few of the introductory versions, because ultimately what's important to understand is what the Bitcoin white paper introduced, right? Even though we call it cryptocurrency, but it introduced a much more important primitive, which is that you can now own your bytes, right? So you can transfer the control over a set of bytes from A to B. You can call them Bitcoins, you can call them US dollars, you can call them your driver's license, you can call them, hopefully, eventually, the deed to your home and the title to your car. But that's the primitive that we introduced. So the talks about cryptocurrencies and so forth is, for the most part, kind of a little bit of a distraction if you think about this. So this primitive is actually way, way, way more important than just quote-unquote currencies.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there. You're pointing out that Bitcoin is just the first application of blockchain technology, and that, of course, involves keys, meaning that you have a set of keys. One is public, one is private, and the private key allows you access to that Bitcoin wallet. But as you touched on there are other applications for this technology that we're really just beginning to scratch the surface of, as far as letting people explore these other areas. We don't yet have deeds to houses on the blockchain yet, but that is something that has long been talked about. Of course, it would require some government to
We basically
give up control.
have the ability to do that with like the same technology people use for NFTs, right? So basically, we already have that, but maybe people aren't doing it.
No one has applied the technology to that particular use.
There's beginnings of that, and there specifically where there's no infrastructure. So either the infrastructure was destroyed for those titles, where the paperwork was destroyed, and so we won't have it before those other countries, the kind of developing nations, will deploy those. I actually wrote an article about this a little while ago.
Yeah, that's interesting that a developing nation is going to go that way before places like the United States, because the government's so entrenched in those areas. I mean, the county registrar of deeds is not going to let go of their monopoly. I mean, they are going to fight tooth and nail. The union's going to get involved, and they're going to do everything they can to stop any kind of technological advance for that industry.
Yeah, I mean, the metaphor is always the same. If you think about like a goat herder in sub-Saharan Africa, the first phone that he got was not a rotary phone, and no one slung like a copper cable to his HUD. The first phone that he got was maybe a smartphone, and he didn't have a phone before. So Same paradigm here. So if you never had a land registry and you could never prove that you owned this particular land, which is true for a lot of these developing nations, then the first implementation that you will hopefully get is not a database, right? Because the common problem that we're really talking about is the database problem. Because with a database, you need someone to control that database. You need someone to operate this database. And the thing about a decentralized software solution, blockchain is one example of a decentralized software solution, is there is no database. This essentially replaces the problem that we created with databases, right? Because when we invented databases in the early 60s, we didn't have a consideration for network technologies at the time.
Sure.
So we created a huge problem by connecting these two networks, essentially. So the externalities from this legacy technologies last year were $6 trillion. So cybersecurity breaches exceeded $6 trillion in damages last year. That's larger than the GDP of Germany, where, as you can probably tell by my accent, I'm from, and it's larger than the GDP of Japan. So a larger point there is, like, these changes to our infrastructure, these are not optional. These are mandatory.
Yep, it's just when you can get these bureaucrats to acknowledge that and
You probably can never get them to do that, but you can start making them irrelevant.
Well, yeah, if we can abolish their bureaucracy entirely, then that would be a way forward. Chris, thanks for the call tonight. Appreciate hearing from you. We'll get that link out when I get a chance to our listeners, and they can check out the full discussion from this afternoon, which was much bigger than my part. There was multiple panels. I was on just one of them, but that's Chris from Sustaining Capital. Thank you for the call tonight. The number is 603-283-6160, and you can join us. Coming up, the latest in the world of gun regulations and freedom. Coming up. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Flags have been lowered at the White House after the U.S. recorded its 1 millionth COVID-19 death. That number, once unthinkable. 2 years ago, the U.S. government thought the death toll might reach around 120,000. But then came pushback by Americans over vaccines, lockdowns, and public health restrictions. President Biden marked the moment during a speech to a global COVID summit.
Today, we mark a tragic milestone here in the United States. 1 million COVID deaths. 1 million empty chairs around the family dinner table. Each irreplaceable. We all must do more. We must honor those we have lost by doing everything we can to prevent as many deaths as possible.
And he repeated his call on Congress to provide him with another $22.5 billion to battle the pandemic. 2 top Twitter executives are leaving the company, and it wasn't their idea. The shake-up comes ahead of the expected takeover of the platform by billionaire Elon Musk later this year. From FSN's bureau in Silicon Valley, Ira Spitzer reports.
Twitter's CEO Parag Agrawal announced the departures of the company's head of consumer and its revenue product lead in an internal memo, noting that Twitter hadn't hit certain milestones in revenue and user growth. The changes come with Tesla CEO Elon Musk looking to complete his $44 billion buyout of Twitter, which he intends to take private. Musk reportedly has told the banks who helped fund the purchase that he planned to cut Twitter's executive pay in a bid to limit costs across the board.
NATO's Secretary General says Finland's application to join the military alliance will be smooth and swift once it's formalised. Finland and Sweden are expected to announce they're applying to join NATO as early as this Sunday. But the move has angered Russia, as FSN's Moscow correspondent Stuart Smith reports from our bureau in the Russian capital, where he is subject to the Kremlin's reporting restrictions.
It was clear that Russia wouldn't be happy, and indeed the Kremlin has come out and said that Finland's accession to NATO will be a threat to Russia. Russia considers NATO a military alliance that is not just defensive and doesn't just defend itself, but also is aggressive, and therefore interprets any NATO action as one which will potentially be damaging to Russia's territorial integrity.
Big news today in the world of space exploration.
The Event Horizon Telescope is delighted to share with you the first direct image of the gentle giant in the center of our galaxy.
Scientists say that black hole is 26,000 light years away from Earth. The images were captured by 8 separate telescopes, and it does indeed look like a black hole surrounded by superheated golden gases. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the crisis in Sri Lanka, where security forces have been given orders to shoot looters on sight as the country's political and economic crisis deepens. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is vowing to restore order to the country after his brother, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, resigned and fled from crowds who surrounded his residence. The brothers have been the dominant force in the island nation since they successfully ended its civil war in 2009, but they now stand accused of authoritarianism and corruption and mishandling a slew of recent crises that have beset Sri Lanka. Alistair Pal is a Reuters correspondent covering events in Colombo.
It's a combination of the pandemic, which cut off tourism, rising oil prices from the Russia-Ukraine war, and also tax cuts from the government. And so that's led to foreign reserves almost depleted to zero, rampant food inflation, shortages of fuel. Our driver today was telling us he queued 8 hours for petrol the other day, and that's obviously really made people very, very angry across the country.
The Rajapaksa's power has relied on the support of the Sinhalese Buddhist majority in Sri Lanka, but this week the newspaper The Island accused them of presiding over the pauperization of the country and placing its national security in jeopardy. The main news again, flags have been lowered at the White House in Washington after the US recorded its 1 millionth COVID-19 death. Veteran Sri Lankan politician Ranil Wickremesinghe has been sworn in as the country's new Prime Minister. 2 top Twitter executives were ousted as the company braces for Elon Musk's takeover, and a multinational effort in space yielded the first ever images of the black hole at the centre of our galaxy. Get in touch on Twitter. I'm there at Simon Marks, FSN. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Following today's press conference in which NASA announced its continuing search for a planet capable of supporting NASA, researcher Dr. Kenneth Heiser sat down with Onion reporters to detail their ongoing mission to find a NASA habitable planet.
Our objective is to find a planet capable of nurturing not just life, but also a sustained interest in the exploration of the cosmos. Such a planet would need to have water and proximity to light and heat, but also life forms with even the vaguest understanding of the importance of astronomical exploration. Ultimately, this would need to be a planet with organisms that have a genuine interest in expanding the limits of their knowledge.
Heiser added that any planet capable of supporting NASA would need to be able to generate a steady stream of financing to meet the agency's $18 billion annual budget.
The important thing is we just need to be patient. There's a limitless number of planets in the universe, and eventually we'll find one with the resources to support our work. We just have to, right?
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the second hour of the program. The phones are open. If you want to join us, 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever you want. That's 603-283-6160. And in the studio tonight, it's Ian,
Matt,
and Bonnie.
All right, so coming up, Bonnie, you're going to tell us about EU cars maybe being regulated into not being able to go a certain speed. We'll talk about that on the way here. But first, Matt, you've been looking forward to telling us because I don't think you were on last night, were you? Or last week?
I was not on last week.
So we didn't get our Matt gun-related update as we normally do.
You didn't get your fill. Well,
when you're here. So where do you want to start? Because I know you said there were a few different stories out there.
There are a few different stories. I want to start with a couple other things, though, that are kind of related. One, just a note. Some of you may remember the siege and attack on Ruby Ridge back in the 90s.
Yep.
Where the ATF showed up and shot a bullet through the head of a woman who was standing there holding her baby, and shot a 14-year-old boy in the back.
Yeah, babies look like guns, so I'm sure the agent that shot her...
It was an assault baby. It was a high-capacity assault child.
Yeah, and didn't they end up promoting that guy that killed that woman?
Yes, the shooter's name was Lon Horiuchi. Lon Horiuchi was also present at the Waco shooting, and when the women and children ran screaming from their burning church, he shot them in the back, just like he shot Sammy Weaver in the back. 14-year-old boy shot his dog and then shot him in the back as he ran away.
And a sniper, so from a distance, right?
There's no way to tell how close he was. The idea was Sammy was walking through the woods with his dog, happened on some strange men hiding in his woods and ran away. Turns out the ATF were surveilling and keeping their house under siege. They weren't aware of it yet. Sammy caught onto it, ran towards the house, and got shot in the back.
Oh my God.
Because ATF people are just murderous dirtbags. 100%.
And why were they being watched in general? Why were the ATF onto them for something?
So apparently, I can't remember exactly how it went, but Randy was asked basically by an FBI dirtbag or an ATF dirtbag, they're all the same, to make a short-barreled shotgun illegal. Basically,
undercover agent.
Yeah, they were trying to get him to do stuff that was illegal. I can't remember how it all panned out, but they basically were trying to pin stuff on him, like make things happen that didn't happen, create a case for themselves. And it resulted in a bunch of controversy and ended up with a bunch of feds staking out his house and pointing guns at his house. And they ended up shooting his wife, Vicky, dead, and his son, Sammy, dead. The little girl now is all grown up and was a huge fan of her father's, and now has children of her own, and also all's well that ends well, I guess. But Randy Weaver, for a very long time, was an extreme proponent of individual liberty. We'll leave it at that. And a promoter of the dangers of big government, to say the least.
And he passed away?
He died today. Yep.
Do we know what from?
I didn't see what he died from. I just knew that he did, and he died of natural causes.
He was 74.
74. It's about time to go for a man.
I'm not even going to look it up. I'm just happy that he gets to go be with his wife and son now, and hopefully there's somebody there to receive him on the other end. I'm sure he's going to a good place.
We actually met him once, Mark and I. He came to New Hampshire back when the Ed and Elaine Brown situation was going on. For those that don't know the story, Ed and Elaine Brown were an older couple They were sort of noteworthy for not paying federal income tax. The feds decided they were going to do something about that, so they demanded whatever compliance, and Ed didn't want to comply. So then they escalated the conflict, they escalated the threats, and they, like with the Ruby Ridge situation, surrounded his house with multiple agents. Ed said he was going to stay in his home. He said, he might have some booby traps on the property, and y'all shouldn't come here, basically. And so they didn't come there right away. They actually stayed out and just lurked around his property for, I think, about 6 months. And during that 6-month period, Ed was allowing people, and Elaine were allowing people into their home, which, of course, inevitably meant they were allowing federal agents into their home without really realizing it. But anyways, some of the people they allowed into their home included some of the Free Staters, the liberty activists that were up here, just kind of making a pilgrimage. People would go out. Dave Ridley went out there, and Free Talk Live went out there at one point, and just kind of to meet these people that were bravely standing up to the federal gang. Mm-hmm. And then at one point, they actually threw a huge party. This was a large piece of property up in a little town called Plainfield, New Hampshire, if I recall correctly. Very, very large piece of property, and they had, I don't know, hundreds of people, a couple hundred at least, people on this property, and they brought in Randy Weaver as like a special guest speaker.
Awesome.
And the Genesis Communications Network, which was our radio network at the time, they were there. I mean, we were there. We're part of their network, and so we went up there. And then Alex Jones did not go. He was not at this particular event, but the head of the network, Ted Anderson, was there grilling. He had his grill master outfit on and cooking steaks or hot dogs or whatever. And I think at one point they had a band play. We left. We kind of went and hung around for an hour and we left. And I guess after we left was when the feds flew a black helicopter over the property. And not just flew it over, but hovered, apparently, for some amount of time directly over where the party was happening, just, I guess, to intimidate people, just to, show them that they were there. But
or maybe run facial recognition software over everybody that attended the party.
Good chance of that, yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, this would have been back in 2006 or 2007. So if there was facial recognition software, it would be pretty rudimentary at that time. But yeah, they were definitely trying to intimidate people. But that's where I met Randy Weaver.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So he seemed like a really cool guy.
Yeah, he actually was a cool guy because he basically gave them the Ron Paul treatment at every turn and just said no. And at the end of the day, Randy Weaver ended up walking away with a slap on the wrist for failure to appear to court.
Wow.
Just with a dead wife and kid.
Yeah, dead wife and kid.
Yeah.
And dog.
So a little more than a slap on the wrist. But you mean legally as far as...
Legally, yeah, he got a slap on the wrist.
Insane.
Completely.
But they never paid him for killing his wife,
They
right?
did
There's
not.
never any kind of compensation or trial about that.
He probably wouldn't have wanted to pay the taxes on it anyway. Good for him.
All right, well, rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Another one I want to bring up, I got an email just before the show started, not a direct personal email, but good friend to Liberty, Jordan Vinrow. He has a company called JSD Supply. JSDsupply.com. I'm going to plug them. Never have before, but I feel I should, even though if you go to JSDsupply.com right now, you can't see anything. The site is shut down, basically with a message to the customers on the front. JSD Supply, let's see. ATF came to our offices and warehouse to serve a cease and desist letter regarding the selling of certain gun parts. So JSD Supply is an 80% firearms seller. And
meaning they sell a piece of metal.
Yeah, or plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, pieces of metal and plastic that are absolutely 100% totally okay, good to go. You can have those. The ATF is futzing around with what their definition of firearm is these days. They're change if they don't like something, they just change the definition of it, and suddenly
they call it a machine gun if it's a piece of metal. Apparently,
it's a bent up coat hanger. That's a machine gun. So, but JSD Supply has a night their job is to sell 80% parts, and you can buy the parts you need to make your own gun. They also have a ton of files on their site for 3D printing stuff. If you just want to 3D print stuff, he's an activist. I mean, this is a business, but it's also activism. You don't have to buy something there. You can just go to the files, download a 3D file for 3D printing guns if you
That's
want
awesome.
to. It is. But the ATF is harassing him. So to Jordan Vinrow and the people at JSD Supply, 80% Firearms, I just want you all to know that we're paying attention. We have your back.
They make these 80% lowers, and these things have been sold for many years. But recently, the ATF has taken a new interest in harassing these business owners.
So JSD Supply doesn't make them. They're a seller.
They're a reseller?
Yeah, reseller.
Okay. And so goons showed up. He's saying here they didn't, quote, get raided, but
they got a cease and desist letter.
The ATF showed up at his offices.
Two agents showed up today and told them to shut it down.
And so rather than continue and risk whatever they would risk by continuing, they did go ahead and close up while
the lawyers
consulting
told them
with attorneys.
to just follow it for now.
And that's a problem here. There's not going to be any punishment for the ATF if they end up losing this.
Correct.
But in the meantime, this guy's business is closed.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correa, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. The phones are open and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Bring up whatever you want to discuss. We're getting updates here from Matt about the latest in the world of gun rights and gun restrictions, with the ATF cracking down on one company. What was their name again?
JSD Supply.
JSD Supply, targeted and threatened, told that if they keep selling the 80% lowers that they're selling, then they might be facing some sort of charges. So they shut down operations temporarily while they figure out what they need to do to file a lawsuit or whatever it is their next steps are. We'll get the latest on more about that. Of course, you can join us here as Sarah is going to do. Calling from New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live, Sarah.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to build a brand new homeless shelter.
You are?
You're doing it all by yourself?
Albuquerque is.
Who's helping you?
Albuquerque is. Well, the city is.
Okay, so you're not going to be there laying brick or plumbing work or anything like that.
No, she can't work in.
I have an input. I've been calling in of, they've been asking the homeless people of what they want in this place. So I've been trying to participate and give ideas also.
All right, what's one of your ideas? What do you think that the new taxpayer-funded homeless shelter should have?
Well, my first thing is those prison bunk beds that I've been complaining about with no side guards, and they have no ladders. How about that?
Oh my God.
That's part of the punishment. So now,
silly.
Didn't you tell us before that the current homeless shelter is a former jail that was repurposed?
How are people getting up in these without the ladders? I don't think I could.
It's hard to do it.
Wait, they don't have ladders in jail?
No.
Right. Well, I mean, it sounds like are you kind of petite? Are you?
Yeah, I'm really short. I'm like 5'2".
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine climbing up like a 4-foot bed up and down?
No. Sounds impossible.
God. And then being so small. And it's a way of punishing people for being in jail, so you don't want to come back again. But they threw the homeless people on these bunk beds, and I've met about 5 people that fell off the beds. And then they hit their backs and their heads, and they're too drunk to sue the city. They need to sue. They're just not well enough. They're not well enough to organize.
I think she's suggesting that a lot of homeless people have alcohol and drug problems, and that is definitely true.
I'm pretty sure you couldn't sue the city if you fell off a bunk bed while drunk.
Yeah, I wouldn't think you'd, especially when they're providing you with the shelter and you can either take it or leave it. So that's a difference here, Sarah, is these people aren't obligated to go to the homeless shelter. They could just go live out, in the wilderness or under a bridge or something like that, and not roll to their doom from the top bunk.
Right. Yeah, but that's the whole attitude of the homeless shelter. If you don't like it, just freeze to death, just starve to death. Just suck it up and take it the way it is. So they're actually, and then the whole thing about it is people are camping out, and then everybody's complaining about, well, they're setting up shelters over here, and I can't.
Sure.
They're bothering my business, and they're complaining about that.
Homeless people are in a lot of cases, at least the ones that stay out of view. I can't speak to them, but the ones that do panhandle outside of a business are pests. I mean, people don't want to have to deal with that. Business owners don't want to have to deal with having to throw somebody off their property.
But sometimes business owners do allow them to stay on their property, and then the government moves in and forces them to stop allowing that.
That's a good point.
They're not up to code. And I'm pretty sure Sarah's all about codes.
Yeah, Sarah, how would you feel about that if you heard that homeless people were being told they could not have their own camp? The homeless people want to have a camp. They've built a camp. They've built a lean-to, basically a temporary structure, a semi-permanent structure in which they're living. And then the city gang comes by, the city government gang comes by and says, "Oh yeah, we're going to tear this down. You guys got to go. You can't stay here." Even though the property owner said they could. What would you think about that?
Well, I mean, I really do not know what any business owners that authorize them for too long. I do not.
There was
know
one
any
that did
of
it
them
here
that
in
do it.
Keene, New Hampshire for years.
Well, I mean that's a very rare case, but I'm very surprised that they want to take on this problem. But
But you didn't answer my question.
Now, what was the question? Would
you
I
support
do?
the government stopping these people from having their shelter in the woods?
If they weren't up to code.
Well, I mean, okay, if the owner says I'm fine with it, they're fine with me, and then nobody else in the area have any problems, then I would say that it's okay.
Okay,
But
we're on the same page there.
Sarah, you just answered
yeah,
a question correctly. What is going on here? I'm going to go buy a lottery ticket today.
Yeah, that's kind of. I mean, if everybody, all the neighbors are fine with it, then if they're not panhandling, if they're coming over, then
Yeah, as long as they're
bothering
keeping to
them.
themselves, I agree with you there. And Sarah, I got to say, as far as your request is concerned, it seems reasonable. If there's going to be a homeless shelter, you should probably make it so they don't roll off the top bunks. I mean, that doesn't cost a whole lot of money to put a little guard in there and, keep the drunkards from hurting themselves even worse. And thank you for the call tonight. The number is 603-283-6160. That said, I don't think that this is a government problem to be solved. I think that government probably incentivizes homelessness in the first place by taxing people to death and regulating businesses to death, putting people out of business, encouraging people to get fired by things like minimum wage increases and all the regulations that increase the cost of doing business, putting people out on the streets, and then, of course, inflating the money supply to make it more and more difficult to actually buy the things that people need to live life. It's getting more expensive to pay for rent. Rent's gone up in a lot of cases 30 or 40% just from last year. And then you've got, in addition to that, the insane prices at the grocery store. So, I mean, there's going to be people driven out into the streets because of these circumstances.
But we can't have monopolies, Ian.
No,
That's
of
why
course
we
not.
need the government monopoly on violence.
You're going back around to the previous caller earlier in the show who called about monopolies. And
I think he thought that was like his trump card to us for being pro-free market. He was like, oh yeah, well, I've heard you guys are pro-free market. What do you guys think about monopolies? Ooh, they have nothing to say to that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But he loves the government, which is, maybe he doesn't, mischaracterizing the guy. He's not on the phone to defend himself. But, the government is the number one giant monopoly, the elephant in the room.
We didn't point that one out, but
Yeah,
that's
we
a good
should have.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, he's asking for a monopoly to end monopolies.
The
and
state
they're
is
literally
the
reason
worst.
a monopoly exists in the
Yeah,
first
they're the
place.
worst monopoly. They're the ones you can't say no to.
And you can't get a good product out of them.
Nope.
Your
they just
entire
don't
life
care.
will be like standing in line at the DMV.
Yeah. They just don't care. All right, so the number is 603-283-6160. As far as homeless people are concerned, let's let the market take care of it. Let's let people who actually care provide shelter. There's a private homeless shelter right here in Keene, New Hampshire, and they do a great job. They help people out. They give people a place to stay, but they're limited on what they give. They're more concerned with helping someone up rather than just giving them a endless free cot.
Right.
The number is 603-283-6160. You can join us here. More about the situation with guns in America, and if you want to weigh in and bring up whatever's on your mind, you can join us here at 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Flags have been lowered at the White House after the U.S. recorded its 1 millionth COVID-19 death. That number once unthinkable. 2 years ago, the U.S. government thought the death toll might reach around 120,000. But then came pushback by Americans over vaccines, lockdowns, and public health restrictions. President Biden marked the moment during a speech to a global COVID summit.
Today, we mark a tragic milestone here in the United States. 1 million COVID deaths. 1 million empty chairs around the family dinner table. Each irreplaceable. We all must do more. We must honor those we have lost by doing everything we can to prevent as many deaths as possible.
And he repeated his call on Congress to provide him with another $22.5 billion to battle the pandemic. 2 top Twitter executives are leaving the company, and it wasn't their idea. The shake-up comes ahead of the expected takeover of the platform by billionaire Elon Musk later this year. From FSN's bureau in Silicon Valley, Ira Spitzer reports.
Twitter's CEO Parag Agrawal announced the departures of the company's head of consumer and its revenue product lead in an internal memo, noting that Twitter hadn't hit certain milestones in revenue and user growth. The changes come with Tesla CEO Elon Musk looking to complete his $44 billion buyout of Twitter, which he intends to take private. Musk reportedly has told the banks who helped fund the purchase that he planned to cut Twitter's executive pay in a bid to limit costs across the board.
NATO's Secretary General says Finland's application to join the military alliance will be smooth and swift once it's formalized. Finland and Sweden are expected to announce they're applying to join NATO as early as this Sunday. But the move has angered Russia, as FSN's Moscow correspondent Stuart Smith reports from our bureau in the Russian capital, where he is subject to the Kremlin's reporting restrictions.
It was clear that Russia wouldn't be happy, and indeed the Kremlin has come out and said that Finland's accession to NATO will be a threat to Russia. Russia considers NATO a military alliance that is not just defensive and doesn't just defend itself, but also is aggressive, and therefore interprets any NATO action as one which will potentially be damaging to Russia's territorial integrity.
Big news today in the world of space exploration.
The Event Horizon Telescope is delighted to share with you the first direct image of the gentle giant in the center of our galaxy.
Scientists say that black hole is 26,000 light years away from Earth. The images were captured by 8 separate telescopes, and it does indeed look like a black hole surrounded by superheated golden gases. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. It's Ian, Matt, and Bonnie in the studio here tonight. Coming up, will cars in the European Union be slowed down by the state? We're not talking about speed limits here. We've got something else in mind, apparently. Bonnie will tell us about that coming up. Phones are open as always, 603-283-6160. And don't forget, you can join us online anytime you want over at freetalklive.com. You can follow our various different hosts and other listeners of the show on our social media platform at social.freetalklive.com. It's Mastodon-based, which means that it's open source, it's self-hosted, it's federated, and so that means it's connected with the other Mastodon systems out there, most of them at least from what I can tell. And so you can interact with people across the entire internet through the federation there. Go to social.freetalklive.com and you can do that. So, Matt, you had more from the world of gun rights and gun restrictions. What is there any good news out there?
Yeah. Well, we don't know yet. We're going to find out.
Okay.
But there's a lot. There's just so much going on. It is super hot right now. And one thing I didn't even think about talking about tonight, just a little bit, I guess, was the Roe v. Wade thing. I've seen a lot of people on Facebook wondering why so many gun people are talking about Roe v. Wade and what does abortion have to do with guns? Well, the reality is Roe v. Wade really never had anything to do with abortion, and it had everything to do with removing states' rights and centralizing power.
And privacy, right? I mean, they said that they were protecting privacy rights, right?
Sure.
That's what it was ultimately
I don't know what you're
like.
talking about. I'll listen to it. I want to hear it.
I think that the basis they tried to use for Roe v. Wade was that ultimately it came down to privacy rights because something I can't remember off the top of my head. I heard somebody talking about it.
Some kind of medical privacy thing?
Yeah, but I don't think the Constitution actually doesn't say anything about privacy rights, but the New Hampshire Constitution does. But that's just a tangent. But they said that I don't remember off the top of my head. Sorry,
Okay.
I thought
No
maybe
worries.
you guys would know something about it.
No, I don't.
Unfamiliar. But if you figure that out, I want to hear about it.
Okay.
Roe v. Wade, there's a lot of people confused about what guns have to do with abortion, and abortion really has nothing to do with Roe v. Wade. Was at the time you had, already in place in the gun world was the 1934 Gun Control Act, and then there was National Firearms Act, and then in 1968 there was the Gun Control Act, both of which severely restricted gun rights as America had always known them. And at that point, those were both really states' rights issues. To hammer the coffin totally shut, they were going to need another type of case that would help on states' rights. They were going to need another case to come along that probably wasn't related to guns. So they came up with, the Roe v. Wade thing came along right at the right time and said, gosh, this would be something. This is a hot button issue that everybody's worked up about, the Roe v. Wade thing. So they essentially were able to use Roe v. Wade to strip away more states' rights. And it made it look as if there's precedent before with the 68 Gun Control Act and the 34 National Firearms Act that state rights weren't as necessary as we always thought they once were.
Well, we should throw in the standard libertarian disclaimer, and that is that states do not have rights.
Correct.
Only individuals have rights. But in the context of the discussion, the idea of the concept of states being able to have the ability to make more decisions for their population, their political situation, to have significant differences between the states. Federalism, I guess, might be the term for that, was sort of the original concept behind the United States. It was essentially supposed to be a bunch of nations essentially joined together with some common, I guess, what was it? Between the states, there would be some agreements, essentially interlocking agreements, and they would have the federal government be able to take on cases of disagreements between those states, right? To judge those things.
Break a tie here or there.
Didn't end up that way.
No, not at all.
No, they shoot people holding their babies now.
Yes. And children in the back. So, but no, they were able to use this to strip away states' rights a little bit more. And now that Roe v. Wade is on the way out, a lot of gun people are started saying, is there any other laws out there that really should have been always states' rights? And
well, sure, every national gun law. But I heard this speculation right after the Roe versus Wade leak happened. A lot of the gun rights people were saying, oh, yeah, they're going to take down the federal gun laws next. And I thought, yeah, that seems really optimistic.
It does. It seems real. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Because the Roe versus Wade, the abortion issue, it's basically a political football. It doesn't really matter.
The Second Amendment's a political football, too.
Yeah, but the feds want to control guns.
Sure.
Right? They really don't want people to have guns. at all levels, whether we're talking about the Republicans or the Democrats. Republicans talk a good game about guns, but when it comes down to it, they don't do jack diddly.
Right.
Look, Trump, right? Didn't he restrict bump stocks?
Yes, he did.
Right.
Ronald Reagan signed the 1986 Firearms Owners Protection Act.
Yeah, and during the times
outlawed machine guns for regular people.
Right, and don't forget that during the times when the Republicans were running the show from top to bottom, where they had the presidency and they had the legislature, they didn't do anything to
But we're
undo
not talking
guns.
about legislation here. We're talking about Supreme Court action.
Yeah, it just seems awfully
it's a little iffy, for sure.
religious to me, the idea that, this great Supreme Court's going to come and rescue gun rights for the whole of the United States.
This panel of people wearing black muumuus.
That has historically done what is in the best interest of the state, not the individual, and not individual rights.
Typically have.
So color me a skeptic on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to remain skeptical too, but just to explain to people who are Roe v. Wade, they're freaking out because how come the gun people are in our abortion discussion? Well, that's why. They're hoping against hope that more rights will be returned to the states, namely the Second Amendment, which is probably the one that has been beat on the most over the years repeatedly.
Did you hear about the House bill that came out or got passed by the Senate and now today the House
in
New Hampshire?
No, what?
Today, I can't remember which one it is. Do you remember what
I
the
don't
number
know
was?
the number.
Well, it says that the local goons, the local cops and sheriffs and all that, they are now not allowed to enforce federal gun laws in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
If it gets signed by the governor.
Oh, yeah, it's
If
going
it
to the
gets signed
governor.
by the governor, it's going to the governor. House Bill 1178. I didn't know about that one.
Yeah.
But House Bill 1178. Unfortunately, that is a bill with zero teeth.
Really?
Yes. It says that New Hampshire cops are not allowed to help the federal government in the pursuit of prosecuting anti-gun laws, anti-gun crimes, or gun crimes, or whatever, unless they want to.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody said to me on Twitter, I heard this got watered down, and I didn't
There
really
you
look
go.
into it or anything.
Yeah,
so
it got completely neutered. It's I don't even want to talk about it. It's such
it's
a sad thing.
embarrassing.
That's sad.
Completely. However, in other news in the gun world, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association has filed a lawsuit on NYSRPA versus Bruin. This is coming up. The Supreme Court has looked this over and should be issuing their opinion on it. The idea that it's going to go very well for the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. It'll make me very happy as a former New York State resident who had a lot of guns. And what the problem in New York is that they're suing over is that New York is a may issue state. They may give you a pistol permit in New York. They may. It's not a shall issue state. And even if they do, I know a kid I went to high school with. He's an Eagle Scout. He's a rocket scientist.
Couldn't get it.
His pistol permit came back with the restriction that the gun had to be disassembled and kept in a safe in his house at all times.
Wow.
So this case is probably going to do away with may issue, and New York will have to be a shall issue state.
Wow.
That's a
we'll
big
see.
step.
We'll see. There's more coming up here. If you want to join the show, the number 603-283-6160. You can take control of the airwaves here on Free Talk Live.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. You're invited. If you want to join the show, you can do that. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Whether you want to weigh in on Roe versus Wade, gun rights versus restrictions. We talked a little bit about inflation earlier in the show tonight. And still to come, cars could be governed heavily in the EU, according to a story Bonnie's going to tell us about. But first, we're going to your phone calls and thoughts. Stephen is in Georgia. You're on Free Talk Live in North Georgia. Go ahead.
Hey, so I think I've talked about this in the past, but I think it's worth re-mentioning. A lot of these agreements for financial aid that law enforcement agencies sign with the federal government have a caveat of, hey, we buy you this piece of equipment, and when we want to use it, it's kind of ours. And they buy the federal government buys a lot of equipment for local agencies, and on top of that, the federal government pays a lot of subsidies so that local agencies can have officers and deputies. So when you look at these, hey, we're not going to enforce your evil gun laws, or however they want to say it, their unconstitutional gun laws, the way that I read a lot of these contracts and the way a lot of these contracts have been portrayed to me, in a way, the federal government has a lot of local law enforcement salary guys. So it kind of, the way that I read it, the individual officers that salary is being subsidized, do they have the ability to say no without their salary getting cut?
Yeah, you're right. Like the 1033 program helped a lot of local law enforcement places get Bearcats. I don't know if Keene's was from that. Do you know, Ian?
Yeah, the federal government gave them a grant for that.
And was it 1033? Because that,
I don't know. I think 1033 is leftover military equipment, and Bearcats were brand new.
But I'm pretty sure in the 1033 program there was that caveat, like, oh, you have to be, we have to be allowed to use it whenever we want.
That was true with the Bearcat as well.
They're dealing with the devil.
Yeah.
Yep.
But so with the enforcement of gun laws, can they essentially say, hey, we subsidize your paycheck. Do you want to continue to get paid?
I mean, why wouldn't they? If they can hold something over your head, then they certainly will. I doubt that there's any police departments putting up a fight against the federal government to where they've ever had to issue such a threat to a local police department, because you have to remember, when the feds come in and they snatch somebody's stuff, whether it be going to a gun supply shop and taking all their inventory, or going to a local head shop and stealing all their pipes, or whatever it is they're doing, whenever they take people's stuff, 85%, I believe, 80 or 85% is given to of any kind of forced extraction like that. I forget the word for it right now. Asset forfeiture. Thank you. Asset forfeiture. That's going to the local police department. So the local police are
they get all the pipes.
Continuously bribed. Well, they'll get the
proceeds,
money from selling it. They're continuously bribed to continue working with the federal government. So they would have no reason to put up any kind of a fuss.
So they're not 100% parasitic. They are 200% parasitic.
Yeah, that was one thing I was thinking about. You said that bill got watered down in New Hampshire, where it was intended originally to make it to where local law enforcement couldn't work with feds on any gun law restrictions, federal gun law restrictions, but then it got watered down by getting amended, and now it says that they can if they want to. Well, I was thinking, oh, well, at least that gives the cops who don't want to do that a way out. They can be like, I now have the right not to do that. But then again, I was thinking about it, and probably all of them want to.
Sure.
They like hanging out with the feds and getting to go do no-knock raids. That's fun stuff for them.
Sure.
It's more exciting.
Steven?
So, I mean, you bring up a lot of good points, but my question with a lot of this stuff in relation to abortion is, how much of what we see with gun stuff and police funding, I guess, for lack of a better term, police subsidies, that sort of thing, how much leverage does the federal government have over a state or a county or a city and be like, hey, we suggest you allow them to get abortions, or you just don't get money?
I don't really think that's a huge hot button issue for the federal government. The federal government just wants to do away with as many states' rights as possible. Because that means it ends up in their court and they get to have say. As far as abortion goes, I mean, I can't really see the leverage there. I'm having a hard time seeing an economic leverage standpoint there.
Yeah, I think they're going to go with the just pass a law method, which, as I understand it, the Democrats are trying to pass some sort of national abortion rights thing.
Which is totally for show. They don't really care. These people don't care whether or not you can have an abortion or not. They don't care.
No, but the midterms are coming up.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Planned Parenthood does abortions, right? And they get grants from the federal government.
That's true.
So maybe they might have some reason that they... I don't know. It's an interesting thought, but I really don't have
It really
any
depends
answers.
on who's on the payroll and when are the elections.
Well, the concerns me with a lot of this is how much criminal enterprise are you creating when you make these bogus laws, right? Like, I've been in New York City and I've seen people buy and sell guns. Like, I walked into a room and this dude was like, there's the drugs, there's the guns. And you're just like, I only want weed. Like, just give me weed. I don't want your coke. I kind of want a Glock, but I'm going to go back to Georgia here in a few days.
Yeah, you're a lot safer in Georgia.
Don't even mess with that.
Don't be doing that in New York City. Stephen, thanks for the call tonight. I definitely appreciate it. I mean, that's just the nature of the black market. A lot of those products get sold side by side.
Yep.
So whatever's prohibited, the dealer's going to carry it.
I'm reading a book by Konkin. It's called like the counter economy. And he just, for like 2 chapters, he talks about all these different ways that the counter economy is working in different countries. And it's even like in Cambodia during communism, during Pol Pot, is that his name?
Yeah.
There was a counter economy selling all kinds of different goods. I mean,
of course.
you can't
There's
stop
one in
this
North
stuff.
Korea.
Yep.
By the way, since we talked about the Roe versus Wade babies and that sort of thing, pregnancies, I had something here from the Pfizer documents. You know, they've been releasing these documents that were supposed to be kept secret until something like 2075.
I haven't seen anything about that on MSNBC yet.
Yeah,
or
I don't
CNN.
think they're going to because then they would have to tell you things like this. According to expose-news.com, the formerly confidential Pfizer documents that the FDA is forced to have been published by a court order revealed that somewhere between 82 and 97% of women who were mistakenly exposed to the mRNA COVID-19 injection either suffered a miscarriage or suffered having to witness the death of their newborn child upon giving birth.
What percent was that? Sorry.
Between 82 and 97%. So here's how the numbers break down. Let's see here. According to the story, 146 of these cases that they had with mothers 270 cases of exposure to the mRNA injection during pregnancy. This was by February 28th of 2021. 146 of those cases did not immediately report the occurrence of any clinical adverse event, but of the 270, 124 mothers did, meaning 46% of those exposed to the injection suffered an adverse reaction. Of those 124 mothers suffering an adverse reaction, 49 were considered non-serious adverse reactions, while 75 were considered serious. That means that 58% of the mothers who reported adverse reactions suffered a serious event ranging from uterine contraction to fetal death. And then they go in a little bit deeper here, and they say that Pfizer says that of the 270 pregnancies, they have absolutely no idea what happened to 238 of them. No outcome was provided for those cases, so we just don't have data about those. But of the remaining...
Wait, weren't these people part of their study? Why do they not have...
That's my question.
Yep, they don't have it.
It's not like it was like a voluntary survey that they could just be like, oh, they never answered.
Don't know. That information is not present.
Or maybe they
shut
didn't
off
give
the
it.
phone line.
Yeah, it could be. But of the remaining 40-some pregnancies, most of them were spontaneous abortion, a.k.a. miscarriage. And then there's 5 listed as outcome pending, 2 premature baby with neonatal death, 2 spontaneous abortion with intrauterine death, 1 spontaneous abortion with neonatal death, and 1 normal outcome. So of the 34 outcomes altogether, and again, 5 of them is still pending. Yeah, 97% of all known outcomes of COVID vaccination during pregnancy resulted in the loss of the child, according to this breakdown.
Color me shocked.
Yeah, we'll post this for you. You can see it for yourself on our social media. We got hour number 3 coming up. You can join us, 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Flags have been lowered at the White House after the U.S. recorded its 1 millionth COVID-19 death. That number, once unthinkable. 2 years ago, the U.S. government thought the death toll might reach around 120,000. But then came pushback by Americans over vaccines, lockdowns, and public health restrictions. President Biden marked the moment during a speech to a global COVID summit.
Today, we mark a tragic milestone here in the United States. 1 million COVID deaths. 1 million empty chairs around the family dinner table. Each irreplaceable. We all must do more. We must honor those we have lost by doing everything we can to prevent as many deaths as possible.
And he repeated his call on Congress to provide him with another $22.5 billion to battle the pandemic. 2 top Twitter executives are leaving the company, and it wasn't their idea. The shake-up comes ahead of the expected takeover of the platform by billionaire Elon Musk later this year. From FSN's bureau in Silicon Valley, Ira Spitzer reports.
Twitter's CEO Parag Agrawal announced the departures of the company's head of consumer and its revenue product lead in an internal memo, noting that Twitter hadn't hit certain milestones in revenue and user growth. The changes come with Tesla CEO Elon Musk looking to complete his $44 billion buyout of Twitter, which he intends to take private. Musk reportedly has told the banks who helped fund the purchase that he planned to cut Twitter's executive pay in a bid to limit costs across the board.
NATO's Secretary General says Finland's application to join the military alliance will be smooth and swift once it's formalized. Finland and Sweden are expected to announce they're applying to join NATO as early as this Sunday. But the move has angered Russia, as FSN's Moscow correspondent Stuart Smith reports from our bureau in the Russian capital, where he is subject to the Kremlin's reporting restrictions.
It was clear that Russia wouldn't be happy, and indeed the Kremlin has come out and said that Finland's accession to NATO will be a threat to Russia. Russia considers NATO a military alliance that is not just defensive and doesn't just defend itself, but also is aggressive, and therefore interprets any NATO action as one which will potentially be damaging to Russia's territorial integrity.
Big news today in the world of space exploration.
The Event Horizon Telescope is delighted to share with you the first direct image of the gentle giant in the center of our galaxy.
Scientists say that black hole is 26,000 light years away from Earth. The images were captured by 8 separate telescopes, and it does indeed look like a black hole surrounded by superheated golden gases. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the crisis in Sri Lanka, where security forces have been given orders to shoot looters on sight as the country's political and economic crisis deepens. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is vowing to restore order to the country after his brother, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, resigned and fled from crowds who surrounded his residence. The The brothers have been the dominant force in the island nation since they successfully ended its civil war in 2009, but they now stand accused of authoritarianism and corruption and mishandling a slew of recent crises that have beset Sri Lanka. Alastair Pal is a Reuters correspondent covering events in Colombo.
It's a combination of the pandemic, which cut off tourism, rising oil prices from the Russia-Ukraine war, and also tax cuts from the government. And so that's led to foreign reserves almost depleted to zero, rampant food inflation, shortages of fuel. Our driver today was telling us he queued 8 hours for petrol the other day, and that's obviously really made people very, very angry across the country.
The Rajapaksa's power has relied on the support of the Sinhalese Buddhist majority in Sri Lanka, but this week the newspaper The Island accused them of presiding over the pauperization of the country and placing its national security in jeopardy. The main news again, flags have been lowered at the White House in Washington after the US recorded its 1 millionth COVID-19 death. Veteran Sri Lankan politician Ranil Wickremesinghe has been sworn in as the country's new Prime Minister. 2 top Twitter executives were ousted as the company braces for Elon Musk's takeover, and a multinational effort in space yielded the first ever images of the black hole at the centre of our galaxy. Get in touch on Twitter. I'm there at Simon Marks, FSN. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Following reports that local full-blown alcoholic Ken Matheson has such great friends that let him drink himself to death right before their eyes, the 32-year-old man spoke to reporters during a typical evening of binging with his closest friends.
Man, these guys are like brothers to me. I don't know what I'd do without them.
The chemically dependent man, who can reportedly always count on his friends to look the other way, facilitate belligerent behavior, and encourage his self-destructive impulses, informed reporters that the members of his tight-knit circle are, quote, the best buddies a guy could ask for.
Can you just shut the fuck up? Seriously. Just shut the fuck up. I lost back then. Keep going. What the fuck are you looking at? I love you, man. I love you.
Check this week's Onion Review for further developments.
I love you. Oh, God, I love everybody.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the third hour of the program. You're invited if you want to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio here, you've got Ian, Matt,
and Bonnie.
We're going to go overseas to Europe, where Bonnie's got a story about car regulations getting even worse.
This is just going to infuriate me. I know this is. I don't even know what this is about yet, but I have a feeling it's just going to infuriate me.
We don't have to live in Europe, at least.
Well, it's not that much better here. They're constantly regulating vehicles here. They're going to be putting in mandatory DUI checks into every new car starting in 2026 here in the United States.
And what's to stop people from ripping them out?
Oh, they'll probably call the police on you or something like that if you try to disable it. I don't know. We haven't gotten all the details on that. But
can the police come to every single call that every single person starts ripping them out at once?
That's not going to happen. Most people are going to do exactly what they're expected to do, which is go along with it.
That's pretty far, right? That's pretty, lots of people are going to hate that.
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think.
You would think.
But then again, most people don't drink and drive. They're going to be made in a way that will not be as it won't be as in your face as the current setup. Like right now, I think a lot of them, there's like a tube that comes out of the dash or something.
Are they really going to do this to every car?
That's what they
After
said.
2026,
perhaps. I mean, they may push it back, but they've already passed the legislation. It was part of the infrastructure bill, I think, that passed late last year.
What does that have to do with
Quote,
infrastructure
unquote.
of anything?
It doesn't.
They bury all kinds of stuff in all kinds of bills.
So instead of having like a tube that you have to blow in to start the engine,
oh my God,
that's the current setup for these things. They will have a more technological version that will...
It's going to be lasers, according to Sarah.
Yeah, somebody said something about lasers. Another person said it would be some sort of a sniffer that would be able to detect alcohol in the air from your breath, in theory. Another one said there would be like some sort of an infrared scanner on your steering wheel that would be able to detect your blood alcohol content through your skin.
Oh my gosh.
So there's a bunch of potential kind of newfangled tech ideas.
And what if in like 20 years from now we find out those steering wheels end up causing cancer to people or something? Because they're like just doing stuff to your fingers without you having really any choice about it.
Well, your choice would be to not buy a new car ever again. In that case,
and people want to know why I want to buy a V8 like sports car right now. V8s are going the way of the dodo because the eco Nazis are coming down and saying,
outlaw that.
You know, I'm sorry, I'm a baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and muscle car dude. I am an American, and I like American things. And one of the things Americans are known for is loud, grumbly, ground pounding, gas guzzling, high horsepower muscle cars, and I want one.
I was going to say, you drive a Kia.
That's a work car though. That is really for work. It does not make me happy at all. It's a pretty cool car for what it is, but it doesn't give me. It doesn't move me.
Right.
You have a fancier or like a muscly car in New York, right?
No, in New York I have a 1976 Volkswagen Beetle.
Yeah, that's the complete other end from muscly.
Well, I just knew it was like an older car. I couldn't remember what it was.
So what's going on in Europe, Bonnie?
According to CNN Business, Europe will require car makers to install speed limiters from 2022, which we're in 2022.
Wow. Okay.
What do they want to limit it to? Europe's already limited to 155 miles per hour. So what do they want to limit it to now?
Wow, cars. Never mind. I'll not ask that question. I was going to say cars can go faster than that.
Oh yeah.
How much faster?
I think the Bugatti Veyron or the Bugatti Chiron is a 277 mile per hour car.
Okay, I can see that with like a Bugatti, but like, what about Ian's RAV4? How fast do you think that goes?
130.
Okay, just wondering.
But for cars that are meant to do it, I mean, they like Germany's full of AMG Mercedes. They're all capable of closing in on 200 miles per hour.
Yeah, what do they even have? They're going to have no reason to have the Autobahn anymore. It doesn't say how fast they're going to limit it to here yet, I don't think. But it says new cars sold in Europe from 2022 will have to be fitted with systems to limit their speed. Under new safety rules agreed by the European Union, all new vehicles are required to have, quote, intelligent speed assistance systems as standard equipment. The EU rules don't mandate specific technology for the systems, which can be temporarily overridden by the driver. Some car makers have already developed ways of using GPS or cameras to detect posted speed limits and make sure vehicles adhere to them.
Wow.
Whoa.
Total control.
Says European Commissioner Alberta Binkowska said in a statement that 2,500 people or 25,000 people are killed each year on European roads, with the vast majority of accidents being caused by human error.
So the answer to your question about what the limit will be is whatever the road, right? So that they're going by the GPS, they're going by, and we know that on, for instance, if you use Waze, which is a little map system that Google ended up buying a few years ago. If you use Waze and probably
actually
Google
Maps too.
Yeah, that'll show you what the speed limit is on the road that you're on,
and it will show you how fast you're going.
Correct, and it'll show you if you're going over. It'll turn the numbers red and give you a heads up that hey, you're going too fast. So they already have all the data they need to put this system into place.
Sure.
All these new cars are completely computerized as far as their operation is concerned. So
I understand
this
libertarians.
is a software
There's so many
issue.
libertarians out there with Teslas and stuff, and they're so mouth breathy when it comes to that. It's like, do you guys not understand that if you say the wrong thing politically, it's gonna be a cop with a button on his dashboard that can shut your car off? From space.
Yep. That's right.
You've got Elon Musk owning creating the cars and running the satellites. And if he wants to work with the police, he will just deliver a button to the cops or whatever.
Hasn't OnStar had that ability for years?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Elon Musk will probably just have the police mess with your Neuralink chip to where you don't want to go over the speed limit.
Yeah, right. It's going to be a hard instinct to overcome with me.
This says, with the new advanced safety features that will become mandatory, we can have the same kind of impact as when the safety belts were first introduced, that woman with the weird last name, European Commissioner, said. The rules, which also mandate crash data recorders and reversing data, were hailed by safety advocates, but others raised concerns over the risk of drivers becoming complacent and less focused on the road conditions, which is what we were talking about yesterday when Sarah called in and was saying, oh, they're going to make it to where cars basically drive themselves now. Isn't that so great? And we were pointing out to her, drivers are going to get complacent and just try to drive drunk more often. Most likely, they're going to be like, oh, my car drives itself.
Sure, that's coming.
The European Automotive Manufacturers Association also has concerns about the technology. It warned last year of many infrastructure-related issues holding back its widespread application. It said that road signs are not standardized across Europe, making speed limits difficult to detect. Digital maps lack speed limit information for many roads.
So the Automotive Association isn't opposing this based on any kind of principle of, hey, our drivers should be able to drive on their own volition.
And nobody ever does. Everybody immediately capitulates with whatever the politicians and regulators are saying.
All these industry groups,
They come up with some clammy milquetoast reasons why. I don't know if this is a good idea. What they should do is say, you know what, we're just going to build the cars, and people who buy them can drive them.
Yeah, that's what a principled group of people that actually gives a damn about their customers would do.
Correct.
But no, they are just whining about how, oh, well, we just don't know if you can implement this technology. We're skeptical is basically what they're saying.
You might need to change all the speed limits in Europe first.
Which would actually be a boon for whatever company makes the speed limit signs that gets the contract. So there'd be a great little nepotism deal there for somebody connected
I'm wondering
with politics.
if the speed limit signs can be digitized so that people who own fast cars can just hack them to read 188 mile per hour speed limit, and that'd be great.
Sweet.
This little caption under a picture here says, Volvo limits its car's top speed to 112 miles per hour for safety.
Wow. This is where the car nerds come in with a laptop, so you can just tune that stuff right out of the car.
The number here is 603-283-6160, except they'll probably make that a felony or something like that. You'll go to prison for the rest of your life. The number is 603-283-6160. You can join us and share your thoughts. It's Free Talk Live.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio is great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Forkfest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Forkfest takes place the week after Porkfest, but Forkfest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, you can join us here. Bring up whatever you want to discuss. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Matt, and Bonnie here in the studio tonight. We're talking about the new quote-unquote intelligent speed assistance technology that the European Union apparently is going to be mandating that all cars sold in Europe, new vehicles sold in Europe will be fitted with this system as of mid-July this year, or midsummer this year, sometime in July. And Bonnie told us the story, and I asked if her story had the details about exactly how they will stop people. And you said it didn't. So I've got one here from the York Press in the UK that says that the limiters work in various different ways, but most reduce the engine's power by retarding the ignition rather than applying the brakes, since that might be a little more dangerous to just all of a sudden, put the brakes on somebody's car. Danger drivers, they say, who try to speed will find their cars are unable to accelerate. Similar limiters are already fitted to powerful cars to prevent their engines from over-revving and causing damage. These systems will use one or a combination of the following. So if they discover that you are going too fast, if this automated system determines that you, based on GPS, where you are, what the speed limit of the road is, if they determine you are going too fast, they may give you an alert. And then if you do not comply on your own, it may do one of the following things. It may automatically reduce the engine's power. You just won't be able to get any more acceleration. Gently pushing the driver's foot on the accelerator backwards. So to have some sort of reverse pressure coming from the accelerator pedal.
Physical feedback.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds really dangerous, because what if somebody's just so used to that, they're like, pushing the pedal differently than they would naturally want to push the pedal. I don't know. That just sounds dangerous to be messing with that.
You mean like if they feel it pushing back at them, they just push harder?
Yeah, and like maybe it stops and they're like speeding ahead. I don't know. It just sounds dangerous. You should be able to control that based on your own brain.
They will issue visual and audio alerts and potential pedal vibrations if the speed does not drop. So those are some of the things that they are planning on implementing.
It's gross. The whole world we're going into is like every dystopian novel and, everything ever written that was dystopian. This reminds me of, this part is based on Rush's Red Barchetta. If you ever heard Red Barchetta by Rush, it's about, going to his uncle's farmhouse and finding the old muscle car, the old sports car that he keeps hidden because it's illegal to have those now. And he's outrunning the cops in it, and it's all analog.
I've heard the song, didn't know what it was about.
That's what it's about.
Bonnie, did you have a quote from some Volvo guy or something? I don't know if it was you or Matt, one of y'all mentioned during, because we somehow got talking about Volvo and being purchased by a Chinese company. And
yeah, it says Volvo, which is owned by China's Geely, said earlier this month they would stop its cars from going faster than 112 miles per hour. It said it's also considering other technology that could put stricter speed limits on cars driving near schools and hospitals. Quote, "We want to start a conversation about whether car makers have the right or maybe even an obligation to install technology in cars that changes their drivers' behavior." That's Volvo CEO Hakan Samuelson.
That doesn't sound to me like they are actually wanting to hear what other people think.
No.
It sounds like they've made up their mind, and they're just using these terms like, oh, we wanted to have a conversation about...
With regulators.
Well, yeah, right. That's probably who they're actually talking to, but he makes it sound like we want to talk with our drivers and see what they think about it. And no, they're going to do this regardless because the government is going to mandate it, and these companies are all too quick to jump through the hoops.
And, Volvo is a great company to do that because... Not to insult any Volvo drivers in the audience, but they're techie nerds and they're dorks, and they tend to be followers.
Okay.
Yeah, let's put it this way. Ithaca, New York is crammed with Volvos. It always has
It's college town, right?
It's not that it's a college town. It's just an extremely left town. Extremely left.
Tends to be true of
I guess
towns.
one way is the other. Yeah, there's two
and it's an
colleges
Ivy
there.
League one, right? Isn't it?
Cornell University and Ithaca College are both there. So.
That Ithaca Dollar guy was there, and he was such a leftist.
The Ithaca. Oh, right.
Is it called the Ithaca Dollar?
Yeah, you're thinking the Ithaca Hour.
Ithaca Hour, yeah.
Yep. Any other thoughts on this car situation?
Tons, but more than I want to pack into this episode of Free Talk Live.
That's bad news. And if they're doing it in Europe, why wouldn't they try it here too? These people are control freaks.
Big time.
And they're already, like we said, they're already mandating DUI checks in all new vehicles come 2026. There's no reason why this couldn't be in the next mandatory car package. And of course, it all brings the costs up. It all all the new things they want to throw under the hood and in the dash just makes it so these cars are even more expensive than they already are. And of course, they're already way expensive because of inflation. And they're not going to get any cheaper, not with all these mandates.
A lot of the things they want to do to cars, the first thing I think of is they want to make it to where you can't get away from the government. Like if you're getting, chased by them or something, you can't go any faster.
Or you said something wrong on Facebook, and now they're just going to turn off your car. You're going to go out and get in the car in the morning, try to start it up, and it's going to do nothing and say, please call administrator to find out what you did wrong on the internet last night.
You're banned for 12 hours.
That's right.
Once your Twitter ban expires, we'll let you drive again.
And it's like those self-driving cars that would know where the roads are and stuff. I have always said I don't want to be restricted from driving off-road if I need to.
Mm-hmm.
And I took you, as soon as I got the Kia, I took you for a ride in it because that has some self-driving attributes to it that are
pretty freaky.
What do you think about him as a guy that likes to drive? I don't like him.
I think it's pretty cool, like the technology, but I don't need that in the car. I don't need that. I think the purpose of it. So the Kia isn't really. It'll self-drive for a period. I have a Kia Niro hybrid, and it'll drive itself for a short period of time before it starts to yell at you and throw alarms, and then it'll just shut off the self-driving stuff and veer you into a guardrail if you don't pay attention.
Okay.
It wants you to drive the car. But for a while it will, and I think the purpose of it is to.
It's got the lane stuff, right?
Yeah, lane keep assist and reactive cruise control, and it can sense a car in front of you. It'll just slow down and keep pace with it or whatever.
Yeah, Mark Edge's car has that stuff too, the Honda that he's got.
Does it?
And I've driven with it when we went to New York a couple years ago. I drove with it, and it just bothered me. I don't know. It's somebody who enjoys driving. I didn't like having this other thing in control.
And I'm with you there. I mean, like I said, that car for me is a business. That's a work car. That's a traveling long distance over the road car. And for that, it's really optimal. It's a really, really great car. It does that job very, very well. And I think the purpose of that lane keep assist is basically there's a safety factor involved, but also I think it kind of, it's
sure, for
less
people that aren't paying
fatiguing. You're not
attention.
steering as much. It's less fatiguing on a long trip. It's kind of nice. So for that reason, I like it. As far as a driver's car goes, as far as getting sideways and making lots of noise and throwing lots of smoke and spent rubber and just sucking 6 miles to the gallon, it doesn't do that. And all that stuff is so fun. And I'm never going to be able to do a traffic course with it and race a parking lot with it with my friends on a Saturday afternoon. It's never going to happen in that car.
We got more coming up. Your calls and thoughts are welcome. The number is 603-283-6160. Crackdowns happening in Hong Kong. We'll tell you what they're doing. They're rounding people up who support democracy. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Karl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Flags have been lowered at the White House after the U.S. recorded its 1 millionth COVID-19 death. That number once unthinkable. 2 years ago, the U.S. government thought the death toll might reach around 120,000. But then came pushback by Americans over vaccines, lockdowns, and public health restrictions. President Biden marked the moment during a speech to a global COVID summit.
Today, we mark a tragic milestone here in the United States. 1 million COVID deaths. 1 million empty chairs around the family dinner table. Each irreplaceable. We all must do more. We must honor those we have lost by doing everything we can to prevent as many deaths as possible.
And he repeated his call on Congress to provide him with another $22.5 billion to battle the pandemic. 2 top Twitter executives are leaving the company, and it wasn't their idea. The shake-up comes ahead of the expected takeover of the platform by billionaire Elon Musk later this year. From FSN's bureau in Silicon Valley, Ira Spitzer reports.
Twitter's CEO, Parag Agrawal, announced the departures of the company's head of consumer and its revenue product lead in an internal memo, noting that Twitter hadn't hit certain milestones in revenue and user growth. The changes come with Tesla CEO Elon Musk looking to complete his $44 billion buyout of Twitter, which he intends to take private. Musk reportedly has told the banks who helped fund the purchase that he planned to cut Twitter's executive pay in a bid to limit costs across the board.
NATO's Secretary General says Finland's application to join the military alliance will be smooth and swift once it's formalized. Finland and Sweden are expected to announce they're applying to join NATO as early as this Sunday. But the move has angered Russia, as FSN's Moscow correspondent Stuart Smith reports from our bureau in the Russian capital, where he is subject to the Kremlin's reporting restrictions.
It was clear that Russia wouldn't be happy, and indeed the Kremlin has come out and said that Finland's accession to NATO will be a threat to Russia. Russia considers NATO a military alliance that is not just defensive and doesn't just defend itself, but also is aggressive, and therefore interprets any NATO action as one which will potentially be damaging to Russia's territorial integrity.
Big news today in the world of space exploration.
The Event Horizon Telescope is delighted to share with you the first direct image of the gentle giant in the center of our galaxy.
Scientists say that black hole is 26,000 light years away from Earth. The images were captured by 8 separate telescopes, and it does indeed look like a black hole surrounded by superheated golden gases. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here and bring up whatever you want. The number 603-283-6160. Whether you want to comment on the new regulations in Europe that are going to mandate that this summer all new cars be fitted with some sort of technology that is going to basically tell you you can't speed and force you to stop speeding. You want to comment on that, you're welcome to do so. Ian, Matt, and Bonnie in the studio. Let's go to Alu Axelman calling us from New Hampshire, where
What's
he
up,
is co-publisher over at the Liberty Block. Hey, Alu.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey, what's on your mind?
So last night I officially published my book I've been working on for around a year. It's my longest book and I think my best book. It's called Presumed Guilty. It's all about how DC politicians destroy due process and how we can restore it. And obviously, I'm sure you guys know the ending of the book. Maybe I'll keep it as a bit of a secret for readers who want to enjoy the whole book. But what I realized throughout writing the whole book is almost every violation of due process, including the surveillance in the vehicles that you were talking about in the last segment, that I think I've been warning about since 2017. When I was on radio in Connecticut on AM radio, early 2017, I was warning about the inevitable, it was inevitable that they're going to have speed limiters and intoxication, checking if you're intoxicated or driving distracted or impaired, and surveilling and speed monitors. They already have governors. They already really can, like Bonnie said, if you run away from the government, they can shut down your car. They already can if they really want to with OnStar and other programs.
Right.
Every car has that.
No, not every car has OnStar, but they're going to get to the point
Probably
where...
every new car, right?
No, I don't know if every new car has OnStar. It's a package.
96 or something.
It's an optional package.
But yeah, I mean, it's inevitable. But they're going to make it even easier. What they said a few months ago, I think they made it even easier to shut down your car. But yeah, now I saw an article a few days ago about the iPhone is going to integrate. It's going to be so great because then if your iPhone learns that you said anything inappropriate and you're essentially a bigot or insurrectionist, maybe it'll shut down your car. So that'll be amazing. But I talk about the surveillance stuff in vehicles and violations of privacy without due process a lot throughout the book. So there are a few chapters on traffic law, surveillance, obviously NSA, and overall just the federal government spying on us. But overall, the solution is going to be from decentralizing from DC and then decentralizing down further to the individual. That's the only solution to this.
Yeah, absolutely true. And that's one of the reasons why you're one of the biggest promoters here in New Hampshire of the idea of independence, not just for New Hampshire, but for anyone that wants it. And you were recently in a great panel discussion that took place at the Liberty Forum. Bonnie and I had the pleasure of attending that event and got to see that happen live. But that video is now online. The Free State Project has it on their Odyssey and their YouTube channel. I linked to it over at nhexit.us for anybody that hasn't seen it. You should drop in. It's about an hour long, not quite an hour long panel with a great question and answer section, plus the great Daniel Miller from the Texas Nationalist Movement was there. He's the president of that movement, and man, he really added a lot to the panel. He's been at this for decades and had a lot of experience and was really a great communicator for the ideas of independence.
Yeah, he's amazing, and he just told me he's going to try to come to PorcFest for a day or two this time. And we're hoping maybe on Tuesday to have a panel with Daniel, me, my dad, maybe a few others, maybe Matt, who started the New Hampshire Independence PAC, and maybe a few others from other movements. Daniel also got us in touch with the guy from Puerto Rico, Exit Movement, because they want to leave the Union.
Oh, I haven't heard anything about Puerto Rico. I know that every now and then they have a vote to stay or go or join the United States as a state.
They always vote to not join as a state.
A guy named Javier Hernandez, super smart guy, speaks a trillion languages, very, very smart. He wrote the book Brexit for Puerto Rico. So I just got that book. I'm looking at it now.
Oh, cool.
I'm going to read it at some point soon.
Where can somebody go to?
There are a few others too.
Where can somebody go to order your new book?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. It's on Amazon right now. I self-publish it. So the paperback and ebook are on Amazon. If you just search Amazon for Presumed Guilty, you'll find it, or look for my name, Alu Axelman, or go to Liberty Block. It's all over there on Liberty Block on every page almost. And I just wrote an article about how I published the book and stuff. And then the audiobook, hopefully, thanks to Bonnie, hopefully coming soon in the next few weeks. The audiobook, I'm super excited about that too.
Me too. So if anybody here wants to, I didn't know if you wanted me to announce that yet, but if anyone listening wants to hear an audiobook read by me, I'm reading the audiobook for Presumed Guilty.
Yeah, you definitely want to order it. Go to libertyblock.com and just check Alu's latest article for links, because if you just search Presumed Guilty without using your name, you get all manner of like videos, and it's a title that's been around for a while, so you gotta be specific which one you want.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share with our audience tonight, Alu?
I think that's all for now. I'm feeling pretty crappy, so I can't even talk without coughing.
All right, best wishes. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Check him out at libertyblock.com. The dude never stops.
Is it the Liberty Block?
Just libertyblock.com. He's always blogging. He's always doing activism. I think he just bought the custom license plate NHXit for New Hampshire, which is pretty awesome.
He never stops.
So yeah, dude.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Energizer Bunny.
I think him saying he's sick is just a cover. He's really a robot.
All right, so let's go to China and get another update. We've been talking a lot about the lockdowns in Shanghai, but that's not all that's been going on. The Chinese government has been targeting Hong Kong recently. I mean, they've been targeting them ever since they took over back in the late 1990s from the British that had control for, I think, a 99-year lease, and then they had to give that up over to the central communists in Beijing. And ever since then, they've been slowly whittling away at any sense of independence that Hong Kong might have had. And according to The Guardian, in a report filed a couple of weeks ago, free media in Hong Kong has now almost completely been dismantled by the government crackdown, clearing the market for an expanded pro-Beijing, state-owned media sector, said a new report by UK-based advocacy group Hong Kong Watch. Came after their Correspondents Club announced it was suspending its Human Rights Press Awards because it didn't want to unintentionally violate the city's wide-ranging national security law imposed in 2020 by Beijing. The working environment for local and foreign journalists in Hong Kong has become increasingly difficult, said the report, detailing the widespread use of lawfare against journalists. You guys know what lawfare is, right?
That's like using laws to wage war against people you don't like?
Yeah, basically you bring lawsuits against people.
Lawfare.
Yeah, you bring lawsuits against them and you just load them up with so much court stuff that they can't get anything done. And they're just tied up forever in courts, and now their new job is fighting in court.
That's
The federal government's kind of using that against the host of this show, right? The Crypto 6 situation. Although in that case it's criminal, in this case it may or may not be.
In library. That's basically what they're doing to library.
LBRY.com tied up with the SEC for now 4 years, spending millions of dollars to try to defend that case. So going after them with national security law, acts of intimidation and police violence, mass sackings, and government intervention or censorship of outlets. It noted the redefinition by police of who constitutes a journalist, the pending introduction of a fake news law, and the criminalizing of traditional research methods. Since the 2019 pro-democracy protests, a crackdown has seen the closure of Apple Daily, Stand News, and other independent media. Sources and citizens now fear retribution or legal consequences for even speaking to the remaining journalists. A government intervention has stripped the public broadcaster there, RTHK, of its former editorial independence, and a chilling effect has spread across remaining media, with some engaging in alarming levels of self-censorship. In one example, Chris Wong, a former news presenter with the TVB broadcaster, described to Hong Kong Watch his attempts to report on the attack on pro-democracy counselor Andrew Chu in 2019, whose ear was bitten off. The attack was evidenced by clear photographs and video, the report noted. Quote, the script the editors provided said Mr. Chu's ear fell off naturally somehow. God. Nobody did anything. It wasn't a bite, and the ear just fell to the floor. The editors didn't want to cover violence by pro-Beijing blue supporters. Because
why even cover it at that point?
Right.
Just lie and say, it fell off for natural causes. He got sudden frostbite or whatever.
That's psychotic.
It's insane, but these are people who are, like these car companies, just obedient. They're going to do what they're told. They don't want to end up in the Chinese gulag. So now they're just carrying water for the Communist Party. The number is 603-283-6160. If you're in Hong Kong and you aren't out yet, you better consider doing that as soon as you can. There's more coming up here, and you can join us, 603-283-6160.
Don't worry about things you can't control. Isn't that what they always say? But it's about impossible to avoid worrying about what's going on these days. The government has used the war on guns, the war on drugs, and the war on terrorism to tear our Bill of Rights to shreds. But you can fight back. The 10th Amendment Center has proven it, racking up major victories. For example, when the U.S. government claimed authority in the NDAA to have the military kidnap and detain Americans without trial, the nullifiers got a law passed in California, declaring the state's refusal to ever participate in any such thing. Their latest project is offnow.org, nullifying the National Security Agency. They've already gotten model legislation introduced in California, Arizona, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Kansas, meant to limit the power of the NSA to spy on Americans in those states. We'd be fools to wait around for the U.S. Congress or courts to roll back Big Brother. Our best chance is nullification and interposition on the state level. Go to offnow.org, print out that model legislation, and get to work nullifying the NSA. The hero Edward Snowden has risked everything to give us this chance. Let's take it. Offnow.org.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference? The Institute for Justice thinks so. That's why we've spent years defending hard-working men and women from pointless government regulations. Nationwide, IJ has created opportunity by reducing government power. But there is still more work to be done. Visit our website today at ij.org. Let IJ take care of the government so you can take care of your business.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, phones open here, where you still have some freedom to speak. Luckily, we're not located in Hong Kong, where the mainstream media is under fire. Any media is under fire there by the Chinese government. That's not to say things aren't happening similarly in the United States. I mean, the mainstream media here has been a government lapdog for decades. but here they're just kind of scratch each other's back. It's like a mutual agreement where if you don't do what the government wants you to
a couple of FBI employees posing as news readers.
Yeah, they may be doing that. I don't know if there's evidence for that.
It's almost a certainty, though.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. But no, here they incentivize the media to behave in the way they want them to by saying, oh, well, if you don't hop to and do what we say, then you won't get to interview any of our politicians.
Or they will incentivize them to do what they say by FBI raiding, no-knock raiding places that don't do what they say.
Yep,
like
that
Project
happens too.
Veritas.
Yeah, and maybe we'll get
Free
into
Talk
Project
Live.
Veritas tomorrow night because there's a new video where I guess an FBI agent has come out. Well, not fully. He's like in the shadows, right? But supposedly he's come forward and was
It's like
interviewed.
a voice
They
filter
modified
on.
his voice, yeah, where he's talking about how they're targeting media, apparently. And I haven't watched the video. Bonnie, you saw some of it today. I don't know if you
Yeah, I
watched
listened to the whole thing.
You did?
But
Okay.
it was like I was getting kind of bored in some parts, so I didn't really pay attention to some parts. But
Yeah, we'll take a closer look at that tomorrow. But for right now, focusing on where things are definitely getting worse at a much quicker clip. That is in Hong Kong, where they're giving us some examples here at The Guardian of just how they're cracking down. Just totally manufacturing alternative versions of stories. In 2019, they give an example of a pro-democracy counselor who was attacked, ear bitten off by pro-Beijing forces, and the editor of this particular television broadcaster there, the RTHK public broadcaster, insisted that they report that the man's ear fell off on its own. That it had nothing to do with a violent attack
Absolutely
or a bite.
Bonkers.
why even report at that point? Just don't report on it.
Yeah.
Hey, look, everybody. Socialism's working.
Wong also said they were ordered to call protesters black shirts and to not cover their press conferences while running the press conferences by the police in full. Quote, unfortunately, TVB damaged the reputation of its journalists, and because of their reputation, all their former employees are living and working under a lot of public criticism. The report also detailed multiple acts of police violence against journalists during the protests, including some which appeared targeted. And then they go into just so many of, so many different examples of this. I'll put up the full story for you on our social media over at social.freetalklive.com.
It sounds like the level of bleakness that can only come from extreme statism.
Yep. The report also accused papers of publishing propaganda, including descriptions of a 2021 vote for the Legislative Council as, quote, the most successful since handover, unquote, meaning handover from Britain to the Chinese, despite a historically low voter turnout of only about 30%. The general public for now can still get news from remaining free media and international outlets, quote, but in terms of Chinese language local media, they really have a much narrower choice, and the danger then is they're getting info filtered through the lens of Beijing's propaganda. And if I recall correctly, there was supposed to be like, I don't know if it was a 30-year or a 50-year transition period. So when the Chinese took over in 1997, I think it was, from Great Britain, it wasn't an instant crackdown. They didn't come in and bring the troops, in the next day. It's been this slow dripping.
They
right?
literally said they were going to boil the frog slowly. And
Did they say that?
boils, well, when they tell you they got a 30 to 50 year transition plan, that's basically saying we're going to boil the frog slowly. Then the frogs all stay to the pot anyway.
Yeah, if communism is so great, why couldn't they just jump right into it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because they had to, like you say, they had to propagandize people. They had to take over the schools. They had to slowly silence the protests and change out the guard of the city council. And
Get rid of the statues that memorialize Tiananmen
torture
Square.
or whatever. Yeah, Tiananmen. So that's one example. And then another one here from the Australian news, news.com.au. China's now rounding up pro-democracy advocates in a new chilling crackdown on those wanting a different future for the nation. China's begun rounding up notable pro-democracy advocates, including one of the most senior Catholic clerics in Asia and a well-known Cantonese pop star, in a move that's been blasted as deeply troubling and a new low. Beijing came out swinging in defense of itself today after the arrest of a 90-year-old Catholic cardinal under Hong Kong's national security law, triggered international outrage and deepened concerns over Beijing's crackdown on freedoms. Retired Cardinal Joseph Zen, one of the most senior Catholic clerics in Asia, was among a group of veteran democracy advocates arrested Wednesday for, quote, colluding with foreign forces, unquote.
The Vatican?
Who knows? I'm sure they'll have a secret trial.
I wonder if it is the Vatican. I bet that's who they're talking about.
Next show that I'm on, I should talk about this for show prep. It says the Hong Kong pop star Denise Ho was a pro-democracy activist, and she was arrested at her home. That's interesting.
Yep, she was the next person mentioned in the article. They also arrested a veteran barrister, that's another word for an attorney, Margaret Ng, and prominent cultural studies scholar were also arrested, and the latter arrested as he attempted to fly to Europe to get the hell out. So they snatched him up before he could leave.
You are property of the state.
Yep.
And that's true here, too. Just FYI, don't go around the United States acting like you're any freer than they are. You
Like you
might
can,
be, but it's only on its face.
Yeah, that's why I say I'm glad we can still at least have the semblance of free speech here.
Yeah,
But
if we ever want it to be real, you got to stop sitting around and do something to make it real. I think we're doing a pretty good job here in New Hampshire.
I think if you're ignorant about the fact that the government actually controls your body and life and everything, start off by actually reading Alu's book. As I'm reading it, doing the audiobook, that perfectly sums up how you don't have any actual control over your own life in the United States.
That's Presumed Guilty by Alu Axelman.
Yeah, it's just an illusion. And the differences between here and North Korea and China are really just in degrees. It's not to say that we shouldn't be grateful for having relative more freedoms in some ways.
Not grateful to government.
That's what I was exactly thinking. Not grateful to the government. Grateful to the people who have held them off for as long as they have in America.
Yep, and if you want to hold them off longer, the best thing you can do for yourself, if you're a libertarian or a voluntarist or a liberty-loving anarchist, is start planning your move to New Hampshire. Don't delay. Get here as soon as you possibly can. Come here this year if you can. If not, next year, get here and don't wait, because before you know it, you might not be able to leave wherever you are. And that sounds crazy, but it could be the case.
We've watched this accelerate over, just in the last 5 years, you can watch it accelerate. COVID was a dead giveaway. If anybody didn't see it through COVID, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, if that didn't wake you up, and if you weren't already making plans, then wake
if that
up.
didn't wake you up, you must be like zero pulse rate at this point. You must be dead.
And I feel really bad for the libertarians who are still focusing on the National Libertarian Party, and they're all geared up to go to the convention at the end of this month, and we're gonna take it back over for freedom. And it's like, oh well, good luck.
I'm excited for that to just be over, so I can stop seeing tweets about it.
Oh, there will still be drama after that's all over. Something's going to happen where some group disagrees with another group's interpretation of a vote or whatever, and they'll be fighting over who got elected, and it's not going to end. And if the Mises Caucus does take over the party, well, good for them. Now you have the control over a completely ineffective national organization that no one pays any attention to.
High five.
Yeah. If you want to actually make a difference, then you got to be in New Hampshire, where the libertarians are not only paid attention to, but they are attacked in hit campaigns. They have postcards that are mailed out against libertarian candidates here, the Free Staters that run for office. They are attacked regularly in mainstream media, in letters to the editor. The statists out there are doing anti-Free Stater seminars about us. They're doing anti-Free Stater protests on the streets. They're buying advertisements to try to oppose us. They started a podcast to go against the Free Staters. No one anywhere in any libertarian party outside of New Hampshire ever has this kind of effect.
True story.
It cannot be accomplished because there just aren't enough of you.
And the best part about the whole thing is every time those opponents open their mouths, it reads like a Move Here ad.
It sure does.
For the Free State Project, for the Liberty Migration. It sounds to any Liberty type person, wow, that sounds awesome. What are these people complaining about? Oh.
And the protests are usually like 4 people on the side of the road, a bunch of old government lovers that
they're always old,
don't even really make
oldsters.
sense. They won't talk to you if you go up and try to have a conversation with them.
That's true. That's because they don't know what to say. They don't want to have a conversation.
I hate freedom.
They wouldn't admit that.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
That's why they don't want to say it.
Out of time for tonight. Back tomorrow. You can join us online in the meantime over at freetalklive.com. We'll post both of these Hong Kong stories at social.freetalklive.com on the Free Talk Live profile. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you